Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate, so we buy shit we don't need.
The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat.
You have owners. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
This is Online Podcast.
And they're like looking at me like I'm asking them to like give me like I was robbing the place. I'm like, I'm just asking for help.
Gave you his card, like, you get back to me. Like, you're the one with the info that I want.
Yeah. No, well, because he wasn't going to be in that office anymore, so he wanted to give me a card. But when we were talking, as we were like, as he was like going one way and I was going the other in the hallway, I forgot to say, hey, I need your, give me your card or whatever. But anyway, it's just frustrating. The whole medical industry is just frustrating.
It just seems like such a racket, Andrew kind of touched on it a little bit, but I went in, I had to get a tuberculosis test for work, and I don't have insurance because I think that's a racket too. Even with the Obamacare, I'm just like, I don't really need this. I'm not going to, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you could go get a little close. Like,
I didn't even know we were.
We have sneaky.
Totally
we just put it on. So that's like
that's cool.
Lead-ins.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was just like, I don't have insurance. I need a TB test for work. And they looked at me like I was just, kind of like Telly said, like I was going to rob them or whatever. And, I made sure to say my friend that works at the hospital told me that I could come here. And they were like, oh, okay. Because it's only $10.
Right.
They put a little medicine under your skin and see if you bubble up and have TB. So
you look like you look like you are the type of person that might rob the place, though.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I mean, I could see where they maybe were coming from with that.
Yeah.
At least the woman who took took my blood yesterday for my blood work or whatever, for cholesterol and all that other stuff. At least she was nice. She's like trying to comfort me. I'm like, listen, I'm not good with this stuff. Like, she's like, you're not gonna pass out or vomit. I'm like, no, I'm gonna be fine. She's like, because you have to fast for like 12 hours. So I hadn't eaten like for 12 hours. And it was,
so now we know.
Noon.
We know now why you were snippy.
What the secret is?
We know why you were snippy on Tuesday now.
Yeah, well, no, Tuesday was because I was like...
I thought that was Tuesday.
Yeah, anyway.
There's no excuse for that day.
Yeah.
She was nice to me.
Just Telly being Telly. But, so, have you had experience with the Obamacare? Because they just passed... What did they just pass? Or it just went through the Supreme Court or something, and it just got... I don't know much about it. I saw
experience, I know what I've experienced in life that had to do with Obamacare, but didn't have anything to do with my health. I guess in a roundabout way it did, but I used to be an adjunct instructor, and I was like, working at 3 or 4 different schools at a time. And I remember when Obamacare was passed a while back. And so when you're an adjunct, you make a really shitty lump sum every semester per class that you teach. And so you're really banking on getting just a ton of amassing all these classes.
Yeah.
So at one institution, they had a rule where you could teach 4 classes in a semester. Hi. And
Casey's here.
So they had that rule. And so they called me very last minute, like a couple weeks before school was going to start. This is how the industry works.
Yeah.
Very shitty. So they called me and they were like, oh, we have 1 more class for you. I already had 3, and that would max me out at 4, I thought. And so I accepted the class, and I was doing my budget. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be able to afford food this
exactly,
semester.
Right.
And then the guy called me right back, and he was like, sorry, because the health care bill was passed, you can't have, we have a new rule. You can only have 3 classes.
Wow.
And it wasn't because, I couldn't have that 4th class. It was because they were making a political statement to, protest Obamacare and say, like, we're really strapped, and if we give you 3 classes, now you're at, what did they say? It was like 20 hours was the cutoff, like to make you part-time.
Wow.
So they need to keep you under that, so you're like ultra part-time, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to go look for work somewhere else.
Right.
So for me, it meant I was going to have to waitress all summer.
Yeah.
It didn't mean that like I still didn't need that extra money or whatever. So, and it didn't mean that they couldn't like, bite the bullet and not pay the freaking president $200,000 a year and pay the people who actually deal with the students more money. It just meant that they, decided they weren't going to do it. So
that's unfortunate. It seems like that kind of. It just seems like a broken system all the way around, and it affects everybody, and that's, and for whatever something just passed today, or within the last 2 days through this, and people are protesting. I think they just upheld the Obamacare, something about the Obamacare. I feel I should probably should have wrote it down, but if
you don't have it, the biggest thing that people were freaking out about.
Penalties or whatever.
Yeah, the penalties, and I guess they double every year.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to be able to do that, and this is a good thing because it's almost like this inadvertent collective action because people can't afford it. So they're like, well, I'm not going to pay it. And that is what gets things done, but it's not that people, this is the sad part, it's not that people actually organize to do that.
Yeah.
It's that they really just can't even afford
it's not really a choice if they can't afford it. You know what I mean? Like where's the money going to come from,
So,
I hear you. Well, I guess based on that, starting with the Obamacare, we'll start off the podcast. So, welcome everybody tuning into the Art Warrior podcast. As always, I'm Andrew Kish. I'm here with Bobby Zeke.
Hello.
Casey Snipes.
Hello.
Telly the Greek.
What up?
And we have a special guest, a very, very intelligent individual, and somebody that we were really looking forward to talk to, Marlana Eck. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Marlana, I wrote down, we chatted a little bit earlier, I wrote down a couple things that she is, I guess, well known for. But she is a Dissent Consultant as well as the founder of the Lehigh Valley Vanguard, which is, would you consider it like an online magazine? Or
Yeah. It's an online, I guess, zine because it's not, super formal. It's not like the New York Times or something, but so it's kind of zine-y.
And we had crossed paths because you had contacted me you did like a small little piece on my artwork, which thank you very much for that. It was wonderful, and I really enjoyed your perspective, which was really awesome. And after reading that and reading more about the online, going through the Facebook post and the magazine itself or zine, it was really when we started putting this together. I mean, she was on the short list immediately. I was like, we definitely have to have you on, and
thanks so much.
So we're really excited.
Yeah, and thanks for checking out the Vanguard. It's really, I don't know, one of the biggest things is subverting authority, right? And putting that authority back in the hands of the people instead of people going out there and looking for authority figures, which I feel like that's what our school trains us to do, is to look for that authority figure to say, this is what you should think. So it's a lot about, getting people in the community to express their opinions. And that takes a lot of effort on my part because some people, they don't identify as writers.
Yeah, right.
I get a lot of poetry. There's a lot of poets in the area that, because it's easy to be more obscure then, and you're like you're hiding your political
It's a very abstract, way of getting your ideas and your emotions out, about something without being too, touching on it, and I sympathize with that because as an artist too, I try to be a little bit, subversive with my imagery or symbolism without like calling out particular enemies or whatever it is, because I think that even though we live in a culture, a society where it is it's okay to criticize, there still are things that you have to kind of keep in the back of your mind, I guess.
Yeah, and there are dangers too, like, okay, how much can I say without making myself completely unemployable?
Yeah.
Right? Because we live in a capitalist society, we have to get by on that, money unless we're independently wealthy, which would be nice. But
well, that's something that you had said that you were interested in talking about when we had chatted online about the the community, like a self-sustaining
bartering,
the bartering community.
Yeah. Well, this is actually my friend Adam and his wife Sarah. It's their project.
Oh, right on. Okay.
And
they had something here, didn't they?
Well, that was
ago.
like a joint kind of. That was my own like little brainchild, but it was.
Oh, okay. That was a while ago. That was last year, or like maybe a half a year ago, wasn't it?
It was in March, and
all right. Well, then
what we did.
I'm completely off
You'll
the
have to
time
come
there.
to the next one. That's cool. So
I saw it.
What we did was we had a couple speeches talking about one, what is bartering, because sometimes people don't quite, understand why it might be good for them, and like what is this system that we're in, capitalism? Why is it problematic?
Right.
And then we also had poets, because that's another big part of the Vanguard, and we had a mini art show. It was a pop-up, so it was very DIY style. And then we had an actual barter. So yeah, but they're still going strong. Every couple months, sometimes every month, they'll have a barter. Do any of you guys know like what bartering is, what it does?
Yeah, it's like an alternate economy.
Yeah.
Essentially, I mean,
it is. I mean, I don't have a formal education on like the current model, but I would think just based on what my basic understanding from elementary, school, it would be more like you have goods that you bring to the table. If somebody else has goods, they bring that to the table. If you need what they have to offer, you can offer what you have to satisfy each other's needs.
Right. And you can also use IOUs.
Oh,
services
really?
too.
Services.
Goods and services.
And services, yeah. So, some people would say, well, I'm not an artist, I'm not an artisan, I don't bake, I don't do any of this stuff, but can you mow somebody's lawn?
Right.
Can you, anything that you can do.
That's how things used to be done.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean,
Bobby, what would you barter? Other than your artwork,
myself.
Yeah, well, I mean, say that might be.
Strikingly good
I think
look.
that's different. That's something different than bartering. I don't know. I don't know. If that's necessarily. I don't think
the oldest occupation. So it's been around for a while for a reason.
There's a reason why that's for women.
So what, besides art?
The oldest occupation. I don't think.
Doesn't work as well for guys.
I don't know. Women are much more selective on men. I don't think men are as selective.
What can I do? I can bake. I can cook. I'm good at that stuff.
There you go.
Yeah. So you could say, you could make up very nice artistic little gift certificates and say, I'll come over to your house and I'll bake for your family,
I'll have the
right?
prettiest cakes in all the land.
I would love to see the person that barters that for their family. I would actually barter. I would give something just to sit in on and see Bobby cook for somebody's family.
I just like that group on Facebook, so I'm gonna keep an eye out so that maybe if they do something in the next couple months, like I got my gardens ready to just explode.
Boom.
Yeah, you gotta come. I don't know why I didn't think of that right off. Yeah.
No, what? Like I said, I heard about the group, or I saw some of the events, and I saw the event that was posted for here.
Yeah.
But it's like last summer, I actually remember posting something on Facebook saying, "Hey, I'm looking for XYZ, like I think honey and some other things, and I have greens and tomatoes and cucumbers and stuff in exchange."
Did
and
anybody bite?
No, I mean, no, I didn't.
They were probably like, go to the store.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, right. You can find that stuff at the store.
No, but that's great though. I mean, it's like I said, I from my limited education, I guess, on it, like Andrew said. Yeah. That's how things used to be done. Yeah. In the 50s, I don't know, 40s, 50s, 60s.
Well,
I mean, you go beyond that, and I mean the Native Americans.
Exactly.
I mean, that was their entire model, for how they. I mean, they had an economy. They had a system in place. It was just wasn't.
I bet
paper
you there's
money.
other cultures too that you can find that in history.
Oh,
or maybe even like more current history, recent history, where it's just a barter type of system. That's
it would almost be cool to incorporate like technology in some sort of way where you can apply like credits to certain goods.
Yeah,
certain vegetables give you certain credits, so you may not want to trade something at that moment. But then you build up credits almost like Bitcoin or PayPal, where then you can go back and use them at a later date with whoever else is in the group
of thing.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point too about the valuation of goods. I guess it would be more personal than it would be.
Well, I mean, for stuff like food and stuff, there's a personal element to it, but stuff like food, well, how much is this at the grocery store, and then
kind of just base it off of that.
Yeah.
Right.
And that would be the easiest way.
Or at a farmer's market. Because obviously that's going to cost.
Yeah,
you'd
have to. Yeah, it would be the organic price or the farmer's market price. Yeah, it wouldn't be the super shiny, waxy.
Or if you just build
artificial apple.
Yeah. If you just build a relationship with someone, and you say, yeah, I value your goods at XYZ, and you value my goods at XYZ, and then you just build a relationship.
That's the best part, I think, is the relationships that you build.
The community, yeah.
Yeah. So, like at the last barter, I brought. Just some crafts I make, like little cards and stuff, and something like a tree I painted, and like a bunch of different little things that I made myself. I brought my mother; she makes like fine jewelry and stuff.
Oh, awesome!
And
so you have a background in the arts, so that's really awesome.
Yeah. I dabble.
That's important for everybody to dabble, I think. Create
think so
something.
too.
You know?
Yeah, I think we're all creators for sure. So I brought these things, and then Bobby, you were talking about, and Telly, farmers market quality, made with care. But I've been to a lot of farmers markets, and some of this stuff was just so beautiful. Like at the bartering event, people were like, "Oh, I just picked this from my garden this morning."
Yeah.
And I was able to talk to them about the stuff that I made, and they were able to tell me like, "Oh, I planted this at such and such a time," and it wasn't boring, or it was like, "Oh my gosh, I know this person." Whereas you go in the grocery store and you're like, "Oh, this was made in Mexico," even though you're at like a Whole Foods or something where they say, "Oh, it was, this is organic." Okay, but where's it from? Like,
right.
what,
Right, what are the particulars about it? You don't know the people. You don't know if the people that were picking it or harvesting it are treated fairly or given a fair wage. I know that they just had something that was in the news about, I guess, a strawberry, like a berry place in California called Driscoll's. And did you see about that?
Driscoll's is like the top.
Well, I see that a lot in the
they're
stores.
Like the top distributor.
So I mean, after reading about that, I guess they were having an issue with paying like horribly low wages to the workers, and I think that's where technology definitely helps us, in seeing that. But what you're saying about understanding where it comes from, it's important to kind of have a little bit of knowledge of that, because number one, for your health, and number two, for making sure that people are being treated fairly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But in general, though, I mean, from what this group is trying to develop, keeping everything local, whether it's not its food, but it's more for the local economy, personal economy, and just developing something. Because let's face it, I mean, at some point, that's going to come. In my opinion, I think within the next, who knows, 10 years, 20 years, it's going to be more pertinent to have local resources for whatever it is that you want. For whatever reason, we're not going to be able to get things delivered, essential goods and things like that. So
we may also have to live off of what is seasonal. Right. More because of with climate changes and all those different things that seem to be on the horizon, and scientists are alluding to the fact that we're on a downward slope right now. I think that would become more important. Like, what can you harvest? What can you plant locally? Because you may not be able to get. It may be scarce. To get food from other places. Yeah,
or even just other services too.
I mean, look at California right now. I mean, they're having the biggest drought in recorded time, I guess. And so a lot of things are suffering because foods that are grown there or whatever. I mean, eventually, as the water is not able to be pumped in there or brought in, they're eventually gonna have issues. And you're gonna see. Right. I would think you're gonna see migration from that area, because people eventually aren't gonna be able to sustain.
It's like sharks.
Yeah. It's like sharks?
Yeah, well, we discussed last time about sharks.
It's becoming a recurring theme.
Well, we had one of our last podcasts. We talked about there was some shark attacks.
Week?
No, it was just shark attacks.
Okay.
And we were saying that maybe it's because of overfishing and just the change in climate and what have you in the ocean. Maybe they're coming closer to shore for food source.
Their source of food is disappearing.
Yeah.
So they got to find it somewhere else. So, yeah, I mean. But no, just the whole bartering thing in general, I think I think we need to be more mindful of, even if it's not like structured, even if it's just with your neighbor and saying, hey, you know, look, like I have a big garden, you know, and your neighbor does something else and the other neighbor does something else, and you all, you know, help each other. I think that kind of stuff is going to become more important within the next 10, 20 years. Right. You know, especially if a lot of these infrastructures keep breaking down, whether it's the, you know, food industry, you know, the transportation industry, you know, our transportation isn't getting any better. Right. You know, our roadways and this and that. So if something can't get to us from, like you say, California, from Florida, or from wherever, but it's cool to see, though. It's really cool to see.
So, what would be the what would you say would be the drawbacks, you know, to the bartering? Because obviously, you know, it's not a perfect system. I off the top of my head, I would think that just the way that it would be viewed by a lot of people in current culture, you would think that you get a lot of artisans, you'd get a lot of crafts type products, you know. And like you were saying, that you can, a lot of people don't know that they can trade services.
Stuff, yeah.
So you would think that in the early stages of a bartering community, it may not have all the necessities. Does that make sense? Or did you find that in your experience that it was a surprising amount of things that you know, you could trade for?
I mean, there's such a good group that will, you know, come to these things. Mainly, you know, because the arts community in the Lehigh Valley is so strong and so good to each other. Yeah. And also because a lot of them happen to be subversive people who want to get into these alternate economies. Yeah. But the biggest obstacle, I think, is just that people don't understand what bartering is, or why it's necessary to get away from this cutthroat capitalist system, you know, and why it's important to be concerned and involved with our own labor instead of being alienated from it. Because, you know, in our culture right now, what we do, you know, if you're an unskilled worker, is you sell your time. It's really what it is. And that's saying, for people who make minimum wage, you know, if you work in retail or whatever, that's saying that the people who own the means of labor, their time is more important than your time. And that means, you know, by association, like, they're a more important human being than you are, and that there's something wrong with that. So what bartering does is it says, you know, like, all of us are talented, all of us are creators, so we need to get together, figure out what we're good at, and start to trade with each other and stop selling our time so much. So what if we got into bartering and we could trade just like all our vegetables together. I realize we have seasons here, so that's kind of sucky.
Yeah.
But
worst seasons.
What do you trade? You trade chestnuts in the winter, I guess.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But you know what I mean.
Like, I got chestnuts. Me too. All right, I guess we're eating all I'll eat chestnuts.
Whatever you got for Christmas or for the holidays, and you're like, oh, well, you got this wine?
I got this
beer.
Like, listen, Casey, I am not trading for that fruitcake. I don't care what you said.
So, I mean, if we could...
No more gingerbread.
March rolls around, I'm bringing in shamrock shakes, seeing what I can get for him.
So that's the limitation right there. You know, it's our climate and things like that. But as far as, you know, we could stop going to these conglomerates that support this cutthroat system.
Yeah.
I have a question, though. What if the guy who sells the bananas or whatever, you don't get along with him, and you're like, I don't like that guy.
That's a good point.
Like, eventually,
he doesn't like you. He's not going to sell you any bananas.
Yeah, and you're like, I have to interact with this guy because I need bananas for my shake or whatever. So I guess someone in the whole system would rise up and be like, oh, I'm good with people, so I'll be the one to communicate. But then slowly, doesn't your system just build back up to what we have? Yeah. Like, how do you stop it from going back into what we have?
I really want bananas, but Dave is such a dick.
Yeah. I have to talk to him. Like, now I can go to wherever, and I don't have to talk to Dave. So
that's like an interesting point.
How do you...
Well... Yeah, that is a good point. You bring up that third party, you know, becomes the go-between, so that way you don't have to deal directly with, you know.
And maybe that's your talent. Maybe you are a mediator.
Right.
You know?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Maybe you get extra bananas.
Yeah, you earn credits that way. You just have to middleman everything.
If you can sell, a couple bunches of bananas, I'll give you a bunch of bananas. You know. So.
It's like we're back in the same system almost.
You got a bunch of like shy, artsy people that don't really want to sell their stuff.
Yeah.
I have apples, strawberries, and.
It's hard. I mean, it's also hard, to imagine yourself outside of a place that you reside now.
Right. True.
Yeah.
Like the conference that I just went to in Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bunch of people who are theoretical.
Do you want to? Just for the viewers that maybe, just maybe tell what the conference was, so that way they have a base of reference. So if they want to,
sure.
I'm sure they can find information about it and other things. But what was the conference?
The conference was called Anarchism and the Body, and it was at Purdue University a couple weeks back. And I was invited to be on a panel on anarchist pedagogies, which is like teaching in an anarchic type way. And also, I was asked to present my project, Anarcha Feminism in Woman at Point Zero, which is a novel. So, what was I going to talk to you guys about? Anarchic structures. Oh, yeah. So, thinking about, like, a system that you're not in is really hard, because you've always known that system. Yeah. And also, there are always misconceptions surrounding this new system. So, with anarchy, like, there are a lot of ways that we're anarchic in our daily lives, but we don't realize it. I mean, what we have now is like a system of capitalist socialism.
Right.
Because we do have the welfare state, which helps out a lot of people, and that's a socialist part of our society. But then we have, like, this corporate capitalist thing that poses as a democratic system.
Exactly.
So it's hard to imagine like what that would look like if we tried something else.
So with the anarchy, I think that majority of people have been kind of programmed or at least have a very limited understanding of what that is as a model. And I would think that most people would think of anarchy, they think of just people, chaos, like burn it all to the ground, let every man for himself kind of thing. Right. People in the streets with weapons to just make it to the next corner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's. I mean, it's obviously a failing of our education system because we don't understand.
But is it though, Andrew? Because they don't want you to know.
Well, right, okay.
What it is.
Okay, so it's a failing of education in general in our country.
Right.
Our system is designed to so that way people don't keep you in and keep you in line and not look out and ask questions and try to understand other models. And so I guess maybe you can expound on that a little bit and
totally.
like explain. I guess more of what the model that you maybe subscribe to or that maybe you teach about, so that way, I mean, for me, I know it would be beneficial to know, just to get an education on that.
So what you're describing and what people think about when they think of particularly punk rock culture, which Bobby just brought up, is nihilism. Mm-hmm. Nihilism is burn shit down, don't care about anything.
Basically Casey.
Yes.
Just kidding. Not kidding.
That's very perceptive. But please continue.
I saw you nodded. When she started saying, you're like, you're actually.
That's me.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Got his blood going.
But yeah, I mean, there are circles of people who are like anarcho-nihilists, right? So they believe in anarchy.
Just think of the Germans from Big Lebowski.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So they
were kind of harmless, though,
So they're into anarchy, but they're nihilists, so they believe like fuck everything.
Right.
But true anarchy, it is about personal sovereignty. Mm-hmm. So that means that you're a leader. And anarchy, typically people think, anarchy is about no leaders. We have no leaders. But flip that on its head, and it's actually about everyone being a leader. Mm. Everyone being a leader, first of themselves, and second, just of their own little microcosm that they want to create, mm-hmm. and the idea that a big government system does not reign over that. So, I mean, that takes a lot into consideration, and the way that we're brought up, we're taught to think that people are like inherently evil and like mm-hmm. nobody can lead themselves, and we need this hierarchy.
Well, is it a necessarily a mindset that people have moving forward, like when they think about it, or is it just the way things naturally work themselves out? Because I mean, there's in most of the animal kingdom, it's a survival of fittest type of situation. So as let's say in a perfect situation or in a vacuum, you have an anarchist kind of society. Wouldn't people eventually that can band together and want to control other groups eventually rise to create government, like some type of governing body that dictates what maybe lesser, or maybe not as aggressive, maybe more live and let live type of people wouldn't really try to challenge that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that eventually rise again? I mean, it seems as though this is something that I'm sure has happened, in our history of man. And it seems like we always get to the same point, it seems like.
Yeah. It always has to start again when you get to a certain tipping point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like the rub, right? Is
Yeah.
that, don't we need this, some structure of government for unruly people,
Yeah.
people who want to take advantage of the system, right?
I guess more than the people that are probably fine, being their own, sovereign situation, it's more like the people that are trying to oppress others to get ahead or move into a situation where they can dictate what's happening in the society. How do you rein that in?
That's interesting
in an
too.
Anarchist, or not even rein it in, but how do you stop people from oppressing others?
Right. So, in capitalism, there's a lot of incentive to oppress others.
Right.
So if you can extract labor from them or time or money, that gets you ahead in capitalism.
Right.
But for indigenous cultures, which, we're not raised to learn much about,
Right.
those people did not have that background of, I need this money to do this or that. Everyone had a talent.
And they just work together.
They'd work together, and
a lot more symbiotic, in a way, like everybody relies on each other,
exactly.
To kind of move forward so that they can survive.
Yeah.
I think as we get the more of the comforts of our current situation, that gets a little bit more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Because it's not like well, you're relying on me to go out with you hunting. It's like we don't have to really worry about those. Like we built up this situation that we're in now, where it's. I mean, the bartering would handle some of that, but it seems like there's so many things that we use in our everyday lives that it seems like it's very complicated.
The same cycle that we mentioned can be applied to even businesses and that sort of thing too.
Yeah.
Like remember the one South Park episode where they were kind of knocking Walmart the whole time and trying to support the local business. But then by the end of it, Walmart was done, but the local business started to grow and then just became Walmart again.
Yeah,
right. So
it's like a self. It just continually goes. So with the indigenous tribes, obviously they have a simpler lifestyle. Well, I won't say that.
I don't want to get in trouble from my friends who are indigenous scholars because they might watch this.
I was just going to say indigenous.
What do you know about
just throw a
indigenous
disclaimer
people?
out there. Just be like, we don't really know much about it, but we're just going to,
Right, yeah. I mean, I'm not an indigenous scholar.
Right, there you go.
But
I was going to say, I don't think we have to worry about offending indigenous people.
No.
They're going to whip out their iPads and be like,
Probably
those
not.
bastards, yeah.
They're probably like, they could care less what our opinion is. They have their own things to worry about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, as just in the discussion, as far as the indigenous tribes go, it seems as though they have a simpler model of community and their social structure.
For us, maybe we'd call it simple, but think about it this way. We can't even wrap our minds around how
that's
it
true,
happens.
right.
So maybe it's more complex than we, give it credit. And it wouldn't have stopped if, people didn't come over and say, you guys are just vulnerable, and we're going to come in and do our thing. And, that's how democracy kind of works now, where we democratize other people.
On that point, it seems as though technology also lends itself to the demise of those kind of cultures as well, or that type of culture. Because when you think about any oppressing country that was like an empire that was trying to move into it seemed as though the more technologically advanced society would have an edge. Obviously introducing guns and weaponry, against bow and arrows and more primitive weapons was in a lot of ways the demise of the Native Americans and a lot of the indigenous tribes to the America. So it seems as though technology adds to the just the decline of those cultures. So, where would technology fit into a more anarchist kind of system or structure?
Well, look at us. Look at how many times the government has tried to repress our technology and make it seem like we're in the panopticon, right, where we're always being watched. Don't do anything crazy on the internet because your government's watching you.
Yeah. Well, just so you know, we all have tape on our our things, so we're full subscribers.
We're cameras though, phones though. You gotta get. I don't have tape on.
We're full
subscribers. Not that we're doing anything important either. So I don't want the government to watch me when I'm by myself and my door's locked, and you can fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just to thinking about ways that we can connect with each other. I don't think it's really that people are being terrorists. It's just like to keep you scared because that technology is so important.
It has been helping a lot, especially with organization and protests and things like that.
Right. So,
helps connect people that are of the same mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Then at the same time, drones can go and blow them up. So.
Well, yeah, right. The same breath, there's death machines flying through the air. Yeah. That are unmanned.
It's fascinating that you can learn about different, like you're saying, connect people, and you can learn about a bartering system, which seems like a more primitive, a more simpler lifestyle. So this is actually kind of bringing us to...
It almost brings you back.
Yeah, we're like, let's just simplify.
Certain movies and comics that kind of acknowledge that like the utopian future will be more of a primitive lifestyle, but with just technology sprinkled here and there.
Well,
look at every movie that comes out.
I wish I could make more references to it, but I've definitely seen it quite a few times where that is kind of like the more ideal, realistic future where we kind of hit the reset button a little bit and kind of go back, but we still have this technology that remains and makes life easier, which ideally that would be the whole point of technology, to make life easier.
That's why I said I think the bartering thing is going to be really important in the next 10, 20 years or whatever. Like you said, maybe hit restart to an extent where it's kind of like, all right.
You could be out digging in your garden, but then if someone gets sick, you hit a button and a robot comes and drops off medicine, like little things like that. And
your garden is your medicine, son.
Ideally, as humans,
it is.
Ideally, as humans, you would think that as we advance technologically, as we advance, intellectually, you would think that we would be using technology to simplify our lives, so that way we don't have to run this rat race or this hamster wheel of got to get that money, got to get that what I need to survive. Like you were saying about, well, now I got to do this extra job because of some loophole or some thing that happens, where we're constantly have this extra weight and this extra cloud kind of hovering above us, and it's always this.
We're kind of being pushed to be a more subdued culture through technology, and whether or not that's intentional by the people in charge, but it's definitely that's what's happening. We're becoming lazier and just more comfortable, so we don't want to go and take those extra steps.
Right.
Everything's just shoved down our throats, and you're kind of fed stuff and not being able to educate yourself.
Part of the problem is people don't have the time to really invest in education because they're think about it. You're working. Majority of people, I would say, probably work more than 40 hours a week. Right. Just to sustain in our current financial structure. I know for myself, I can't just lackadaisically just do. I have to work extra, a lot as a small business owner, much more than most other people, that are just working like a regular 9-to-5 job, because it's just different. There's a different model. But I would assume a lot of people are working overtime, picking up extra jobs, doing other things just to maintain. So when you're doing all that, you need some type of reprieve, and you don't always have the energy nor the time to be able to invest in looking. So it's almost in a way of keeping you complacent because you don't really have the time, to do it.
Also, even reading is a luxury of time. Yeah. I grew up in a very poor family, and all of the education that I got, that was there were always walls put up, because the poorer you go, it's ridiculous, because the more you go into the lower...
Could you just move the mic a little bit closer? Just so we don't want to miss all these good nuggets.
The poorer people are, the more they buy into this whole neoliberal, gotta work more, that's going to make everything better for me. when really, like, you're neglecting yourself and you're working for somebody else, and
you're not around for your family.
You're not, exactly. And that's the really sad part.
You almost make yourself vulnerable then to be taken advantage of, because you don't have the opportunity to know, like, make an informed choice. You know, you actually are you're less informed, and then you have to take people's word or trust people that maybe are not trustworthy, you know?
No, they're not. And so, like, by me even being a scholar and writer, like, that was a subversive act for me.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you're born poor, it's like, okay, you're a worker, and that's why, you know,
not
we
a
still
thinker, yeah.
Exactly, we have a caste system still set in place. The higher I go up, the less I meet people who actually come from poor families.
Right.
Like some people I meet, you know, in education, I was just talking about this the other day, is like, they'll say, oh yeah, like, I came from a poor family, and then they'll be like, oh, and I had a trust fund to pay for college, and I'm just like, okay, but
yeah, so that
doesn't
really make sense, and
right,
you know, like, logically that's
yes.
You know, yeah, I think I'm with you. I think that seems to be, you know, a definite drawback to, you know, people, you know, I guess moving into, or just understanding what other things are out there for, you know, like what we're learning about today with the anarchist kind of ideals. There's so many things out there. You just do need time. You need energy, and you need some connectivity. You know, a way to do it. So, I mean, in a way too, you know, I know you do. What would you consider, like a webcast, or like you do that webcast for Vanguard?
It's through Google Hangouts, live on air.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just a live web show.
So that's a good way for people to, you know, if they do want to get some other education. I mean, there are avenues out there where technology can kind of bridge that gap a little bit, mm-hmm. and give us an opportunity to maybe listen in, or maybe while we're doing something else, kind of tune into something and expand your, you know, just your horizon of what's out there and what's available, you know, to say, you know what, I don't subscribe to this, and I know, I think majority of people, if you ask them, unless they're somebody that's just living high on a hog and just like taking advantage of everybody and kind of a psychopath, you know, in a way, most people would, yeah, people would is a sociopath, yeah, or psychopath too, I guess.
Both, yeah, they're both
you
fun.
You guys talked about that Ex Machina movie. That guy was a total crazy sociopath.
Yeah.
One. But anyway.
No, yeah.
I must have a problem because I like every single character in a movie that's like that.
Do you? Yeah, well,
he was my favorite. I want to know more about him than anyone else.
He was really funny, though. Yeah. He had some really good jokes. But anyway.
But I was saying that I think most people would say that they feel deep down that there's something not quite right about the way that they go about their daily lives.
Yeah.
Or they're yearning for something and they can't quite put their finger on it. And I think that's that internal sense of self that's saying you're being kind of taken advantage of in the current model, you know?
Yeah.
And I seem to bring this up like every podcast.
That's okay.
No, I'm saying this point because I think it's pretty valid. And we're at the most informed point in our society, more or less. I mean, we're able to get whatever information we want, whether it's valid or not, or connect at any second at our hand. But yet, there's still so much static and distraction that you still have to, find your way into things that actually matter. And like Casey was saying about how, even with the anarchist model, technology can come in handy because people can, get into like a bartering group or develop a bartering system where everyone is a leader, right? Like you're saying, but at the same time, I mean, and like the point Andrew's making about how people don't necessarily have the time to find, the goodness that's out there because of technology, because of the things like the internet, which is still, that's a frustrating point because you see so many people who are still just so blind and ignorant to a lot of things that are important.
Yeah.
So I think the more technology is available to us, there's still that fine line between, those of us who are able to look past what's being fed to us or what the system wants us to know about, and going past that and finding the good information, finding the people that are putting the videos on YouTube, that are helpful or that are, that are coming from a different perspective and might enlighten you in one way or another, or events, or
they also are an intellectual or maybe very educated and almost somebody that is doing what they're saying so that they you don't have to do as much of the digging yourself. You can kind of subscribe to what they have already dug up, you know, and then learn from that. I think that's really what we want, is the meeting of the minds, because like not everybody has time to be a master of everything, right? Right,
of course. Like we discussed before we went on air, you know, with these podcasts, like we're doing, and like there's plenty of other podcasts where, you know, obviously you have to take everything with a grain of salt, no matter what it is on the internet or in the media or whatever.
Yeah. Let me tell you, they let anybody. Anybody can put a mic. Yeah. I think us four here are proof of that.
Yeah.
I won't say that for Marlena, but for us, definitely, for sure. You know.
Well, there's the duality, guys. I mean, there's always going to be that duality of like, okay, there's some really distracting stuff over here, like, you know, cat videos, which can be fun.
She's pointing at me.
Yeah, she's pointing directly at Bobby.
You're into the cats?
She knows Bobby's into cats.
No.
Cats are great.
I thought it was being lumped in with the cats.
You got to be on top of that.
I missed that one.
So, you know, I mean, there's the cat videos over here, but then there's some really good knowledge for you over here. So, you know, you have to use your discernment, and that's where some people kind of fall by the wayside. But
all right, hold on, David. Are you going to sit in for a little bit?
I just have about 15 minutes. I'll just listen to you guys.
No, well, come on in here.
I'm in my studio listening to you guys.
Are you listening? We'll just let anybody that's listening and not see. He's off the camera, but David Summers just popped in the studio, so he's just hanging out listening. So
our previous guest.
He was our guest.
Oh, cool.
Previous.
Yeah.
Great. Hi.
But so I do have kind of just to bring it back to some of the things that you're doing. With what you're talking about here, the Lehigh Valley Vanguard. How have you found that there's you're getting a good reception from people, you know, with what you're doing? I mean, maybe you could just give like a description of like how you would describe it in your own words of exactly what it is, so that way, you know, anybody that's viewing this can kind of get a general idea, but also maybe let us know how it's been going, like the feedback that you've been getting, and you know, because it's obviously a new venture for you, or relatively new, and it's something I think that's very, very important to our culture, and I think that's something very important, especially to our community, you know, our small community, that we'd like to see flourish. You know? Well,
there's several parts that I could use to, you know, answer that.
Lehigh Valley Vanguard on Facebook, by the way, and the website is
www.lehighvalleyvanguard.org.
Thanks, guys.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, of course.
We got
well, that would have came up at some point anyway.
Yeah, we'll throw it in there.
Well, it'll come up at the end.
That was cool. I'm gonna like take that sound bit and just like play it, put it on like a recorder, and everywhere I go, I'll just play you guys.
And you're gonna lose fans, and unfortunately, now we're gonna be
unless you have it on video with our faces.
Yeah, don't put any video.
You'll have them all coming in, but.
So it really started out, and I wrote an article about the beginnings of it on a publication called Hybrid Pedagogy, because it started out while I was an educator in college, and you know, I taught composition 1 and 2 in English, and also some remedial classes and stuff, and I did this project with my students, and this is where, you know, Andrew and I discussed finding yourself as an artist, as, you know, the creator that you are. So this was part of me finding myself, is just like starting this web-based, you know, blog that students could use, especially the remedial students, to have a place to be proud of the work that they've done and know that other people can see it and say, you know, I've gone through this a bunch of times, I've revised it, and get them really engaged in the writing process, because when you're in college, you're always given these, like, crappy, like, dry academic assignments that are just, they seem dumb. Yeah. Like, oh, write about, you know, I don't know, blah, 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 and it's got to be an MLA format. Go, you know, don't. It's very dispassionate. So anyway, so I was giving them assignments that they cared about, that they could put up on a website that their friends could view.
That's awesome.
That they could go back and look at and say, oh my God, I found a typo. And that gets them into the writing process versus them just handing me a paper and me like marking it up with red ink, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I had this project going, and then the administration contacted me and they were like, you've got to take this website down.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, but why? They're like, oh, FERPA laws, we have to care about privacy and all that. I was like, okay, well, I will take the last names of the students off.
Yeah.
And they were like, nope, got to take it down. So it wasn't about privacy, obviously. It was about a new pedagogy that they did not understand.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, that was my last semester teaching, and I was like, fuck this.
Yeah.
So after that, that's when the Vanguard really like sprung into my mind. I connected with a fantastic educator, Kevin Mahoney, works at Kutztown. I don't know, maybe you.
I don't know the name, but
he has his own publication, Raging Chicken Press.
Okay.
And it's a grassroots organization. And I'd also, personally had struggles with putting out writing that went against the status quo. Like, I don't buy into that bipartisan democracy type shit. And I was trying to put out very critical prose from somebody who was concerned about our society but didn't want to engage the way that I was supposed to.
Yeah.
And there's a whole other element to that, which is that I'm a woman.
Right.
So people think, oh, she doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And you're young.
Yeah,
which
it's a double whammy.
Which we've
or
all
triple whammy.
We've all experienced.
Yeah.
Well,
people telling you.
Did I just set that off by accident?
People telling you you're young.
Oh, never mind.
No, nothing went off.
Okay.
People telling you you're young and that you don't know anything.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Kelly's 80 and he's found the fountain of youth, but he looks like a 20-year-old.
But then, they say things like,
soaks in Christian baby blood every day.
He's looking pretty young. He's looking pretty vibrant.
Jeez.
Now you know the truth. Now you know the truth, David. Yeah, I'm telling you. Anyway, sorry.
So people say, millennials, they're just so apathetic about life and they just don't care about anything. But it's like, no, man, like, millennials just don't like what's going on.
Right.
And they want something new. And because I wasn't able to get that information out there, I thought, I'm going to get it. I mean, this is the age of, like, the do-it-yourself,
That's right.
So why can't I just start this publication myself? And I did.
And it's really very good. For anybody that's listening in, you really should check it out because, you have some really wonderful writing and some really great pieces on there. And it's a great sounding board for a lot of different ideas. And I think that, just from our very small interaction, I've read some things on there that have opened me up to different ideas and whatever, and I think that you should be commended for that.
Yeah,
you should be commended for that because that's really.
And you still do the fun stuff too, like you have a Mad Men discussion, and kind of like we like to do,
and a lot of art, which I think is great.
Oh yeah, you just featured Jessica.
Jessica.
Yes, right.
Yeah, she fantastic artist.
Yeah.
But I mean, all that stuff, in combination is what makes a really rich. Questioning culture that people like millennials want to be involved in. So that's
and it's a lot more holistic than just like a very narrow like most magazines or most periodicals or whatever, things like that, they have a singular focus, and then you kind of in a way get brainwashed by their agenda. Where if it's a little more holistic, you get viewpoints from different avenues that maybe you don't necessarily jive with or you don't always agree with. But that's important to understanding the whole, like the big picture. And I think that's where the direction that we need to kind of move in. As in your case, an educator and somebody that's putting out ideas, and so that's what's great. That's what I loved about it.
As someone who I know who's very involved with technology, and hopefully we'll be having him in later in the summer from out of the area. He does podcasts and the like, and some of the podcasts that he does are in regards to disruptions to society, as small as how MP3s disrupted the CD industry,
right,
and things like that. And he's said on many occasions about how we are the media. Everybody now is the media.
Yeah.
It's not like pre-internet where the only media was the media that was forced down our throats.
Nobody saw anything if there wasn't a reporter and a cameraman there. Now everybody's a cameraman.
Now we're all able to report.
I mean, do they even have camera people for the news anymore? I think they're pretty much just using whatever information is available through the internet and
source.
But
we're all able to get a voice out, obviously, which is a big reason why Andrew asked us all to be on this podcast. And
it was more of a collective, I think, than
right. Well, why it was discussed.
Yeah.
But we all had something to say. You had something to say. Your students had something to say. All these people that you're having, that you're interviewing and that you're talking with, all have something to say.
Yeah.
And
David
their voice
had something
matters.
to say.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's probably one of the best things about the state of technology. Talking about the technology again is that all we need is a way to get it distributed.
Yeah.
All you got to do is put a video out on YouTube, and there you are. We're all media.
You can link people together.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I think in some ways too, like that voice of the individual is much more important in some ways than even the voice of like a collective agenda, because that's scripted. It's been manicured. It's been manipulated. Where you have an individual voice of somebody that's in the situation. That I think that's much more valuable, because you get the intimate quality of that person's perspective. Where we kind of live in an age. You had mentioned the duality of things, where we have this very, very scripted presidential kind of politicians speak, and then you have people that are saying, writing things or putting things out on their own through YouTube, and it's completely
very anarchic,
different.
By the way.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's totally different. So I think a majority of people are now going. We have so much available to us that people are now looking at the that prescribed way of talking. The politics or politicians, and we're going, no, wait, what? Why are you talking down? Like, why are you talking at people like that? Nobody. We've had a conversation about this before. It's like somebody came into your house and spoke to you like a politician. You'd be like, "Listen, you sound like a liar, man. Like, get out of my house." Like we don't. Yeah, I don't want to engage a conversation with you the way you're speaking. But I think that's important, that individual voice, because when you have many, many individuals coming together and they all have maybe a different perspective, but you start to see similarities, that's where you get where culture comes from.
And because of that, jargony language that you're talking about, people also have become very, I don't know, maybe I should just tell the story before.
Yeah.
So there was this one article, it was a cross post actually from the Anti-Media, which is actually a really good site if none of you have seen it. It's
what's it called? What's
the antimedia.org, I think it's .org. Or maybe .com, but the Anti-Media is a really good site run by some activists. And so I got in touch with the author of a post, Justin King, really cool writer, and he wrote a post about being on the ground. Which one was this? It was the one before Baltimore. It was
Ferguson?
For Ferguson, yeah, okay. For Mike Brown.
Yeah.
So he was on the ground there, and
Does he live in that area, or did he like?
He went there.
Oh, he went there. Okay.
Yeah. So his article was like, how long do we have to wait before we use violence against the police, right? And his article was very, professional, critical, but in our area, like people, I saw, unfollowing the post or whatever, and somebody actually emailed me, and this is you asked me what kind of reactions I've been getting. So somebody emailed me, and I knew him because we had done poetry readings together and stuff, and he's an older guy and definitely like comes from a position of privilege, and that's what framed like his whole thing. And he was also talking down to me, not just as a younger person but as a woman. He contacted me to say he didn't like the post versus Justin King. I realized Justin King's not from around here, but he's also a man who he figured, this man will probably stand up for himself, whereas this young woman is just going to listen to what I have to say, and she's just going to take it. And I'm very polite with people. Like I'm not. I can be like intense, but I'm never disrespectful. He told me the post was irresponsible. And I said, okay, maybe from your position, you've never considered what it's like to feel like you want to enact violence because you're feeling so oppressed. But these people have been systematically oppressed, and they're saying, what do we have to do? We can't. We don't have anybody.
The breaking point,
we don't have anybody in government, looking out for us.
Kind of just found out with what was it, episode 1, when we were discussing the hell were we discussing? Baltimore?
Baltimore? Was it Baltimore?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like so long ago.
Yeah. But that
all the way back at episode 1.
I mean,
no, well, that Baltimore.
It was
happened.
a discussion that episode, but my stance on it was that the people fighting back and creating violence created change.
Creates change, yeah.
Yeah.
And that is what happened. That's how long it took, and it in my opinion, it helped.
Yeah.
It made them come to decisions much quicker.
Mm-hmm.
There was
they indict
there wasn't a 2-year-long trial that people just forgot about, and
right.
Then they got off.
They got an awesome lawyer.
They handled it in weeks, if not, maybe not even that long.
Yeah,
right.
But that's what you have to do to get an actual response. From a system like that.
Yeah, and I don't.
That guy saying that was irresponsible. That's.
And he wasn't, Justin King wasn't on this diatribe we need to burn things down.
Right.
Yeah, you should almost send him a reply, be like, well, what do you think of Baltimore and what happened and how fast they actually, had action.
I mean, I responded to him, and his response back to me was obviously shock, because he didn't think I was going to actually respond to him, and especially not in an articulate way, because apparently he thought that I was stupid.
That's also a good thing to do, because they're not people like that aren't used to a response,
confrontation,
especially an educated one and one that's well spoken.
Well, I think
used to that, because these days it's all just like YouTube comment fights where you just start yelling crap at each other, and it becomes very childish very quickly. And when we actually have an educated response, they don't know what to do with it. They're not used to that.
That's why I think he circumvented talking to the writer, and he went through you, because he didn't want that confrontation. He felt like he could bully you into like his agenda or whatever his thought process was, and felt like the writer would have a much more grounded opinion of what he was writing. I mean, it's childish in a lot of ways.
And I think people they have this idea that because of who I am, like the way I look, I'm a woman, I'm a small white woman. I don't understand the things that I put online, because how could I understand?
You're just sharing from BuzzFeed. When you're not on Pinterest.
Right, exactly. So I definitely get that blowback a lot. But as long as I just keep showing people that that's a binary way to think, hopefully that will create change. But politically too, some of my stuff is more out there than some of the just leftist stuff. I mean, you look at the Vanguard and you'll see radical left. Not just bipartisan stuff, but it is in there. And people think too, if you're radical left, you don't understand what radical left is, and it doesn't do anything, and this and that. And it's no, radical left is thinking about radical things. You're thinking about living within a system that wasn't created by you, that you want to perpetuate, that's not working for anybody, but you're just going to keep plugging away at it, you know. So radical left hopes to change that, you know.
I thought it was just the left, but a cooler version. Tubular, bro, radical.
It's kind of cool.
They're like the left, but way cooler.
We're rad.
Yeah.
We're rad left.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've as I've gotten older and educated myself and into politics and things like that, I've recognized that we basically wind up making a choice of the least the lesser of two evils, so to speak. You know what I mean? And I think you had put together. You have that video. I think it mentioned something about that.
The Anarcha Feminism video. Yeah. So what did you guys think of that was my first time ever doing the style project, and it was a lot of images, a voiceover, and some music.
Okay, so
what did you think of that?
So how can what's the title so that people can find it on YouTube? So we can throw it up
we'll
there.
Post it.
Yeah, we'll post it too. Yeah.
Anarcha Feminism in Woman at Point Zero. So there's two parts. So the one part explains what Anarcha Feminism is, and then the other part is just talking about the literature that I'm using that lens to look at.
Well, I'll answer your question.
Go ahead.
I had to go through it multiple times just because the amount of information you share.
Yeah, me too.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I had to watch it and then I had to listen, and then I had to just get my opinion together. So it's definitely a lot of information coming at you. Yeah. And I wanted it first to, just because of the stigma that goes with the two terms, anarchy and feminism. Mm-hmm. I wanted to have, when I knew you were coming in, I wanted to have arguments ready. But then slowly, as I'm listening and actually absorbing the information, I'm like, oh, wait, I'm on her side. Yeah. So I think you presented it well, and it was able to kind of convert me from being ignorant to understanding the information.
It is a stigma that's forming, because a lot of feminist organizations lately, the ones that get a lot of press, they don't really handle things well, in my opinion. And I do think they're kind of ruining things for people that actually have something educated to say.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different parts of feminism, just like, there's a lot of different parts of anarchy and stuff. We could talk about feminism for a little bit if you guys want, since I'm here.
I'd love to, because that's something that I know, just from my own perspective and talking with you guys, it's something that we don't, we kind of get the media version, of feminism, and like Bobby was saying, what's kind of pushed down your throat.
It gets way too close to the whole shock culture that's been going on for a little while now, which is annoying, especially someone like me who's a big fan of comedy and writers. It's typically the things that I see the most are things that rub me the wrong way. When comedians are vilified for telling jokes, which is their job. Right. Or people like Seth MacFarlane, he was asked how he wrote an episode, 4 or 5 years ago about what's the guy that just had the change, not sex change.
Caitlyn Jenner.
Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah, they were asking him, well, how did you know that Bruce Jenner was going to become Caitlyn Jenner? 5 years ago, and he said that he won't respond. Right. He said that, when this shock culture thing's end, we'll have an adult conversation, and I'll talk to you about it. Right. But I'm not going to answer that question now, because I will be vilified, and I will become a story. Yeah. And his response was well, he was kind of a bit feminine back then. He was kind of weird and doing stuff already. Yeah. But you can't say something like that these days without being vilified in some way by someone. Yeah, right. And he knew that, and he's a smart guy, and he knew that he couldn't just.
He's
say
not going to go down that path. Right? Yeah, because he was kind of being.
That's what's going on a lot now, where you can't really voice certain opinions without having the fear of certain groups attacking you. Yeah, and that's where the shock culture thing kind of it gets a little annoying. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wonder if you have to deal with that constantly.
It ruins things for people that actually have educated opinions about things.
What was that?
Well, I was just wondering if you have to deal with that constantly, just fighting, more than people trying to understand, you're just fighting off these people that want to vilify you, or...
I don't do... I think... I don't do a lot of that. There have been certain instances where... I'm perceived a certain way if I walk into a room and people know what I do, or I get a weird email.
Yeah, it's kind of like because you get lumped in with the people that vilify every single person for saying a slightly, it's not even offensive. It's just it's their opinion, and they point out something that might be really obvious.
The worst, I think, and I think that goes to with a good example are comedians, because comedians, they might come off in their jokes what they're paid to do, and make jokes about people, and it might be about certain people that are, whatever it may be, that fall.
Well, it could be stereotypical groups or things like that. Right?
Yeah, and they're, a lot of them are looked at like, oh, you're an evil person, you're an awful person because you talked about, Mrs. Jenner or whatever, Caitlyn Jenner, But at the same time, it might be because it was he at the time, it was involved with an accident where someone died.
Right. What?
I think he's still being sued. I think right now.
He was driving a car.
See, I don't.
He caused an accident that killed someone.
Oh.
But no one's talking about that. But if you do talk about that, and you say, oh, well, you know what, that's pretty awful, you'll get attacked because you're talking bad about somebody who just put themselves out there.
That's because they're famous and they have money. That stuff gets swept under the table. Most people don't know that Matthew Broderick took out an entire family in the 80s.
Yeah, right.
But Matthew Broderick is a white male. If seriously.
Bruce Jenner used to be half
seriously.
That.
For example, that's the world we live in, and it's unfortunate because we should all be looking at each other as humans. If you're a good human, if you're a bad human, no matter what, creed, color, sexual preference, etc., etc., etc. But the second that you say, I don't want to deal with this person, and they're of a different race or creed or sexual preferences or whatever, all of a sudden, like Bobby said, you're looked upon as being, you're,
anti-this,
you're anti-this, or you're this or that or whatever, or you're, against women.
That didn't used to exist, though. I think that is a very modern thing.
I think it's much more current in the last 10 years.
There's definitely that ethos now. It's a very confusing time for people.
It is a millennial thing too, because like Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock have come out and saying that they refuse to play colleges now. Yeah. It's not fun for them. They know that it's like a thing to be offended now. To group together and pretend to be mad about something because that's something to do now.
I think it also detracts from the larger issue. So we have Caitlyn Jenner, who is able to embrace her identity, right? But why? Because of all this capital, of all this money.
Attention, right.
But we have people, who also, they want to embrace their identity, but they don't have capital. And then, you guys are right. It's such a distraction to have that. And plus, you're not looking at, okay, so Caitlyn Jenner wants to embrace this femaleness, right? So we're not even thinking about, okay, what kind of femaleness, because we got to talk about that binary of like, what kind of female do you want to be? And by being in Vanity Fair, you are like kind of just nodding okay to the oppression that women go through when they're put in corsets and put on the cover of a magazine.
Right. Yeah, like you can't even really analyze the situation without being possibly vilified. And it's very strange because that subject alone is already, you have to tiptoe around it.
Right.
Which is weird.
Well,
like they tried to break it down to two different things, like cisgender and.
Yeah, cisgender, that was just put in the dictionary now as a thing. I know, like, just from being in, like, academic circles.
They just needed to have a vague term because you kind of just want to be able to describe someone as something. That's what people are used to being able to do because everyone gets so offended easily nowadays. It was, you had to just come up with a new word to be like, well, let's just have a broad thing so that no one gets mad. And
well, the thing is we're all born... I think that the whole idea behind it is that we're born with both capabilities, and a lot of people are born and they have both male and female genitalia. But sometimes people are born and they get, the doctor chooses, okay, well, you're going to be a woman. And then they grow up and they're like, I identify as a man. And so, for instance, say if I was born and the doctor was like, you're going to be a woman. And so now I identify as a woman, right? So I would say I'm cisgender.
So just to clarify, you mean like born with both...
Like male and female
organs.
That's and then they just... Where they kind of just decide at birth.
This is just what
So then they just do like they just go about like mutilating the child in a way?
They basically make a decision for the child.
Wow.
So or they could ask the parents to make a decision.
Right.
But it's seen as like kind of a minor thing. So that's where they come up with this term cisgender, because the idea is that this happens in the medical community and people don't really talk about it. But then when somebody like, Caitlyn Jenner says, I identify as a female, we wonder, is that because they were chosen, a different path by not themselves, so that's where we get that cisgender term.
How do you feel? How do you feel about that individual getting all this attention, putting all this attention on herself with this situation? Like, do you think it's right? Do you think it's just in the sense that it's being done correctly because it's through celebrity? I mean, like you said, it's because of that capital that the person can put themselves out there. And like I said, I mean, if there's people out there who know the story that's not too, didn't happen to that long ago, where he at the time caused someone to die, if you don't, feel right about that because it's kind of being swept under the rug because of all this other stuff.
But that's not sexy.
Right. Yeah. But I'm saying if I was to say that and say I don't agree
Yeah.
with this individual, like getting all this attention when all this, this other thing happened, all of a sudden I'd be looked at as saying, oh, you're an awful person because, you don't agree with, all that other stuff. I'm like, no, I honestly, it's getting attention because it's out, it's our media.
It's what's entertaining now these days to dummies. They eat that stuff up.
Yeah,
they don't care.
Well, exactly.
And the weird thing is, like that Vanity Fair thing. Like, I don't know if anyone saw the pre-airbrushed photos.
Okay.
Not that great. Like the package is still very much there.
Like you're saying, it's just a negative going on Vanity Fair with airbrushing, but then also it's a positive role model to a lot of people in that she was able to,
in the trans
come out.
community.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know how you
Yeah.
feel about.
I mean, it's difficult, because for women, my former teacher, she wrote a really great article for the Vanguard, and it was called "Dear Caitlin," and she talked about how it's really good, that you were able to embrace your female identity, but let's not go into this whole
objectification,
right? And when you decide you don't want to do that, like your sisters will be waiting for you here, because we've been dealing with oppression for however long, right? So, I mean, you can still take an educated look at issues. I received no hate mail about that article, coming out because it was done in a very tactful way with respect. It wasn't like saying, you're whatever, you're
not one of us, you're not part of it, because
it
of
was
this,
like,
that, and the other thing.
Check out what you're doing, but you got to consider the family that Caitlyn Jenner is in,
right, exactly.
with all the
that's what they all do, right?
Attention whores. I mean, that's all it is.
I mean, I was gonna
right?
it's exactly.
You put yourself in the spotlight, you're going to get the positive and the negative.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing, it's, and whether you're good people or not doesn't make a difference because you're putting yourself out there like that, or anybody else. If you're, a pro athlete and you do something to, domestic abuse or whatever to your wife or to somebody, it doesn't matter what race you are, people are going to think that you're scum. As they should, correct?
For a few months until the season starts.
Well, I'm just using that example because
if it's that long,
I'm using that example because
it's like a couple weeks now.
It's something else that gets a lot of attention.
Fans are very forgiving.
Yeah.
It's one other sect that gets the most attention in our society. All right? And that person might be, whatever race they might be, Asian, black, white, whatever it is. And if you say, I don't agree with this person, or I don't like this person.
It's immediately associated with a stereotype, that.
Yeah, we're saying, oh, Andrew, you don't like that person, like, what's wrong with you, or you're this or you're that, or you're labeled as not liking that group,
right?
Well, there's definitely like an upheaval. That's what I mean in society. Like people are very confused, and I mean that in like a good sense. We're going through a lot of changes in the way we think. For instance, we have this branch of study called post-colonial studies where we look at, literature that's been written. So say like Jane Austen, like I hate the stuff. But if you look at it from a post-colonial perspective, you're not looking at the fancy, like gentrified character anymore. You're looking at, okay, who were her maids? What were they doing?
Right.
How were they represented in the text?
Right.
Who wrote this text? Are they from privilege or not? So with that, branch of scholarship, the academy, things that happen in the academy always then happen in the world. They go out into the world, and that's what you're seeing now is like people are looking at history books and saying, who are these history books written by? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But people don't know how to deal with it, as a whole. They're just like, oh my God, look at all these things I have to question now.
Yeah.
Where do I draw the line? And I think that's where you get into people being overly sensitive because their world is turned upside down and then not knowing how to react. So that's what I mean when I say it's a confusing time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I would agree with that.
I think people just need to stick to their guns a bit more. It always bothers me when a celebrity has like some sort of weird tweet or gets caught doing something wrong and they apologize afterwards. And it always bothers me because I'm trying to think of the one. I think it was like Jonah Hill was getting harassed the one night, like all night, by a photographer. Like, and they were just trying to get pictures, and the guy was egging him on and kept calling him stuff. And eventually, just Jonah Hill snapped and like just called him a faggot or something. Yeah. Which maybe not the best word to choose, but at the same time, you're being harassed by someone all night.
Right.
He wasn't calling him a faggot because he was gay.
Right.
It wasn't because he was a guy acting feminine. He was being an asshole. He should have said asshole, but he said faggot.
Right.
There's a stronger word, so when you want to piss someone off more, you go for it. Yeah. And it's really only stronger now because it has a stigma attached to it. Now, we all used to say it in middle school before we knew what it meant.
Right.
And then we found out, and we're like, oh, I guess we can't say that anymore.
Right.
But, and then... Yeah, well, it was caught on video, and he was vilified, and he went on Twitter
had to apologize.
and apologized. But at the same time, like, that dude was harassing you, and he even the thing that set him off was the photographer started like talking shit on his family or saying horrible things to purposely get a reaction. Mm-hmm. But no one really like targeted the photographer for egging him on. They're like, oh, he said faggot.
Yeah.
Let's not ask why. Let's not talk about the intention or the context. But someone famous said a word. Yeah. And
there's media spin too because there's money. What's said about others.
Yeah, that stuff always bothers me. But if he would have stuck to his guns and been like, he was bothering me. I wanted to use a strong word because I was pissed.
Yeah.
That would have been fine. Yeah, some people still wouldn't have liked what he said, but at the same time, he would have been fine. He wouldn't have lost any fans.
Yeah.
He would have been fine.
Right.
And I just hate that. I feel like this shock culture thing wouldn't have as much power if people just stuck to their guns.
Well, I think Marlana brings a good point about the media. They tend to, look at all the race things that we're dealing with right now. They're all blown out of proportion by the media. The media capitalizes on a situation and then they stir the pot. They create a bit like a more of an issue about it. I think a lot of the issue that is what we're dealing with now with the policing issue. It's obviously very much about race, but there's also an authority issue that we're dealing with. We're dealing with a system that's running amok with violence, and that's in my personal opinion is the bigger picture. And then we also have like the systemic racism and the oppression that happens.
There's also the lack of cohesive information where you don't know what the story is typically.
Well, the media
it picks and chooses what.
Yeah, they just grab on to
what's more entertaining and what's going to get your attention.
I think we just did that when Marlana was talking. You mentioned, hey, we can talk about feminism if we want. And then instantly our conversation just wove right around it to celebrities and racism.
I've been waiting for.
We'll get back to that.
I just noticed we can just talk about what we want. We pick and choose.
I've been waiting to get back into.
I had an interesting.
Let her talk about feminism.
Not important. What's next?
It's relevant.
I had an interesting question about that we were talking about earlier about how. There's this very sensitive issue and that everything is kind of blown out of proportion, and I wanted to get your take as somebody that I guess you would consider yourself part of the feminist movement, and it's something that you feel that you're proud about. Do you think that in some ways that adds to a little bit of the sensitivity issue that we're dealing with? Because Bobby had mentioned it. Some people don't handle things appropriately, and usually those are the things, the hot buttons that get picked up by media, and then people like somebody that maybe doesn't have experience with understanding feminism sees it in a negative light.
Yeah.
So is there? I would think there's a responsibility to representing yourself in a proper way.
Well, So here's the thing. So the media also, just our culture in general has this investment in making women seem what they used to term hysterical.
Okay.
Right? I have a very active blog, and that was a post that I just kind of talked about. But there's this idea of like the hysterical woman.
Yeah.
And that's basically any woman who wants to share an opinion. Especially in a circle like, feminist circle where a lot of things are misunderstood and misrepresented. The media or, whoever can always fall back on that trope of the hysterical woman. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Her emotions have taken over her.
She's just on her period. Don't listen to her.
Can you not to divulge here, not diverse, whatever, like get off topic, but can you give us your loose definition, I guess, of a feminism, or
not feminism? For sure.
Educate us and anyone that might be listening to this, because I'm sure that we don't all have a clear. Those of us sitting here.
It's probably very individual to what experiences that we've had.
And that's to the detriment, of a lot of people. So, and there's a Twitter account that's going right now. It's called Women Against Feminism, which is really funny to me because it was really popular at one point. I don't know, it may have died down by now, but so Women Against Feminism is funny because we can because I can come here and I can talk to you and I can wear pants and I can have the college degrees that I have and I can go and speak at a conference. That means that I'm a feminist, because feminism, through the first... So there's waves of feminism too, guys, which I'm going to explain to you.
Awesome.
So that was one of the first things, that women wanted. They wanted to be seen as intellectuals. Not necessarily as equals yet, but at some point, they were like, we need to be seen as people who have an opinion. When everything is run by men, we can't do anything.
When did that shift? Because it seems like
I think within the past 20 years, maybe, when the stigma of women being the housemaker, right? Am I right?
It had to have been further than that, because we came from cultures that were we came from cultures that were very much in adoration of the power of women.
Exactly,
you know what I mean? Women, there was many cultures that were matriarchal and that were literally, the women were the people that you would go to for advice and you know what I'm saying, there was just a reverence to the woman, and they were almost sacred. And I think at what point did we start to fall into a very different system?
Well, it's capitalism, really. I mean, capitalism makes, first of all, men hate women, because men would be the ones out selling their time while women would be staying home, and their life was seen as better, or so. I
don't understand that concept. A sugar mama would be the greatest thing ever.
But
so anybody out there?
I had a discussion at your house with someone about
cooking and baking. I can do things.
Yeah.
But see, that is where masculinity comes into play, right? So to be masculine was to be certain things, like you had to go out and provide, right?
Right.
Even if capitalism is not a good system, you have these binaries of man, provider and whatever. For capitalism to work, you need those binaries. And then through second wave feminism, the war efforts, where men were being thrown out there to die, women were given this marketing campaign of, oh, ladies, go out now. You can be, empowered. Go get a job.
We can do it.
Yes, that's where Rosie the Riveter.
But it was always support your men.
Yeah.
Call our troops, ladies. Yeah. Make them bullets.
So Rosie.
Look at Betty. Look at her go. You know what I mean?
Right.
Some kind of ridiculous.
So Rosie's appeal, though, to women was, women did want power, and they didn't feel like they had any power, but they didn't know that they, were buying into a dumb system. They just wanted to be seen as real people, because they were always like, oh,
was a manipulated.
And in some ways have purpose.
Sort of.
I think that's everybody's wants that.
Well,
everybody wants purpose, that to be part of the community, be part of a functioning system. So when you're segregated from that, you'll take whatever you can get in some ways. You know what I mean?
It's so important, though. I mean, when a woman was. I mean, they still are, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying before things change. In my mind, it's 20, 30 years ago when
you were a teenager?
Yeah, around then.
No, actually,
you were 42.
Yeah, and you were 40.
Goddamn empire.
There was a point where it was more women were graduating college, and then saying, yeah, I'm going to have a career. And put the family like secondary. There's you see articles about this all the time about how women are having kids later, pushing time off for families for themselves. Am I off there, or
no?
I don't want to say the wrong thing.
No. So a lot of it too assumes like there are women in the world who do not want children.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But then you have these situations where women are shown, no, your only purpose, and this is where, the second wave came in, is your only purpose is to stay home and meet a husband. That's the only reason you're going to college, by the way, not because you're smart or anything, but because you want to meet a husband there, okay? And then you want to come, back to the homestead and raise children.
Yeah,
so this was like the 50s, 60s.
Yeah, okay.
I think that was like the peak of when a lot of the propaganda that you put on in that video was very much about from the 20s to the 50s, I think. I mean, you see that really that heavy propaganda about the wife at home, being,
I never really thought about it. It is super manipulative.
So
it's almost like letting the kids stir the bowl when you're making something.
Yeah.
And you feel all proud about it.
Yeah.
So the first wave is the war, getting women to support this capitalist agenda for the war, which, war is a racket too. It creates so much revenue for people who want power.
Yeah.
And then the second wave is okay, we can go to college, we can do all this stuff, but we're still limited. People still want us to not embrace whatever it is we want to do. Maybe we don't want to become a mom. Maybe we do. That's cool too. Yeah. But some of us don't. And then third wave, which is kind of like 80s, 90s, is where men started feeling okay, these are men haters. These are just all feminists are just these lesbians who don't shave their armpits, and we hate feminists. Yeah. Why does feminism exist?
This is called the Murphy Brown era.
Or maybe the term, wasn't even, maybe it was out there, but not as prevalent as now with, we're obviously more informed. We're all reading things. We're all seeing things. In my opinion, that's why I said I saw it from a point where, women going to college, obviously women don't have to go to college. Men don't have to go to college to have a success, be successful in life and do what they want to do.
Right.
Women can just open their own business.
But it's the option that women wanted. They wanted that option.
Right.
So by the time third wave rolled around, they had already had that option. But then, sneaky marketing comes back in, and then women are now we want to be the highest thing we can strive to be are these executives, right? Where we take on the role of men. That was the media spin on third wave, was we become men.
Yeah.
We don't have
women.
Right, power suits. You think of power suits with the third wave, right? That was the
Shoulder
media
pads.
spin.
Yeah.
Shoulder pads. Okay. So now where we're at too is, we'd call it intersectional feminism. So in intersectional feminism, we realize that not all women want to be cutthroat capitalists. We realize that, black women and other women, of the subaltern or, different races or poor women, they have it even harder. We're finally bringing them into the conversation instead of just including these privileged housewives as, the only women who get to have rights.
Right.
We're saying, no, every woman, when they come up, they can choose what they want to do with their lives. And they're not, that's the main thing behind feminism, because, if you're a man, you always had that choice. I want to do this, so I can.
It seems more than equality, but human dignity. You know what I mean? It's just allow people to live their lives the way that they see fit.
As long as they're not harming other people.
Right. Well, right. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, obviously not, I just want to be an axe murderer. So I need to be able to, express myself. Well, the reality is, I think that it seems as though the current, pushback against the feminist, ideals seems to be grasping at straws. It seems like it's dying. You know what I'm saying? Like where you kind of saw how it tried to manipulate things, and then it started losing control, and then it seems to try to keep adapting. So I would say that in some ways, do you find that those are encouraging, that you're going through these waves? Because it seems like every time you go through a wave, it's more empowering to the movement itself, or just women in general.
I think, in this wave, the biggest way it's empowering is that, there are people like me who are like, wait a second, this whole thing was a ruse so that I didn't realize that the real enemy is our very oppressive economic system.
Yeah.
And that's the same when you see like people fighting different races. It's all a ruse so that you don't recognize that you're being oppressed.
It's the smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
It's like watch the illusion over here while I steal your wallet. Type of idea.
Exactly.
That's
a question though. Why wouldn't the government be in favor of more women working? Because they are. That's
the thing. So you want women to be in that whole like, I'm an empowered career woman, versus
they're collecting taxes and
versus like the really smart women who are like, no, this isn't quite right still. I don't buy into this.
Yeah.
Like our country is still funding all these wars, and like shit is not good.
Yeah. I was going to ask a question similar to what in the same line, I guess, is the question of what Casey asked.
I stole it from your brain.
No, but you kind of made me remember what I was going to ask. The family unit has slowly deteriorated, and a lot of that has to do with in my very limited perspective of the fact that now both parents. I mean, I'm in a situation with my family where both of us have to work.
Right.
So I see. I know that there are. I see it that exactly what you're saying, where there's like an agenda where it's almost like the women are kind of
they were a pawn in that.
It's almost like you want to work, you have to work,
yes.
And kind of just shuffling them along. And what I wanted to ask was not about the gender roles, of like the family structure, but more about how you see feminism working to help the family structure so that our children have people to learn from, role models at home, because I think that's very important. And as we've seen in the last at least the last generation or two generations, even maybe our generation, I mean, we've talked about this, where a lot of us were home alone, both parents were working. What would be the stance from your side of the feminist ideals of, about that, like the family structure, and what's the importance of education of our children?
Well, so I know with my family, I saw all the waves through them.
Yeah.
Right? So my two grandmothers, for instance, I saw both sides. I saw, my one grandmother, my mom's mom, she had 4 children, and she didn't want to be a mom, but all her whole life she was like bred to be a mom, right? That's the only thing, that was the only like trick up her sleeve, right? Which is another thing women have to deal with, like how am I going to support myself? And being a wage slave is not a good, mode. So a lot of women are like, well, I can become a mom and get married and be taken care of. So she decided to leave her 4 kids when they were like, around 12 years old.
Yeah.
And I saw how that panned out, for my mom, and then on the other side, my grandmother and grandfather, they stayed together, and my grandmother was like this very subservient person. She's a freaking smart woman. But she like was so depressed towards the end of her life, she killed herself.
Oh wow.
She starved, Yeah. So that didn't work for her either.
Yeah.
But she used to like trick herself into thinking like, this works for me. But the only thing she ever wanted to do was become a nurse. And she couldn't, right? Because she had 2 children. She couldn't do what she wanted to.
Right.
And my grandfather resented her because he was working so hard to support these 2 kids. So, and then, I saw my parents who, I was raised by my mom who worked 3 jobs while I was growing up. And she definitely bought into that whole, like, everything will be better if I just work more.
Right.
I'll just work more and more and more. And then the family just breaks down.
Yeah.
So, and then the father feels like I can't do enough. You know, I have to like check out, right? And I'm not making excuses for my dad, but you know, you see that, right? And that's why there's the Good Men Project is like a really cool website right now, because they're talking about, you know, what makes a good man, you know, like what
through Facebook,
the Good Men.
Yeah, the Good Men Project. Okay. So it's
just a few of them.
There's a few at our table.
A few good men?
4.
At least.
Does that count?
No more than 3. No more than 3.
It's just like, you know, going through time, you know, like if you watch old period TV shows like Mad Men, right? Yeah. You'll see a bunch of different representations of, okay, what made a good man? You know, a good man goes to work. A good man puts food on the table.
Does his duties.
Yes. Yeah. So, you know, that all comes into question. So what we're trying to move towards now with this, you know, new wave of feminism is like recognizing what people do and do not want. For example, you know, do I want to be with a partner and not have children? That's okay for me. Mm-hmm. I don't have to be forced into that to like, you know, survive.
So the Good Men Project is fueled by feminism? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically.
I had a question, but it might be a bit too broad. What would a feminist view as a good man?
That's probably individual,
right? That might be too goddamn broad.
Yeah, I think that might be too broad, because that's probably
feminists are different.
Shit.
Yeah, everybody would
I
something
hesitated
different.
to ask, but I'm like,
There's probably a few. A few underlining things.
Look, that's the thing that always confuses me, because it's like, you know, you hear this feminism and this and that, and it's like, you know, is it like, I know every woman out there doesn't hate every guy. Obviously, there's women that are in great relationships,
from what
and
it sounds,
children and stuff like that. And at the same time, you know, as like a single guy who's not attached to a woman, you know, like in a relationship, you still have women around you, and you can still be supportive of them, and you know, even like little girls in your family or whatever,
right?
And be supportive of them and say, hey, look, like, you know, your education's important, your family's important,
right?
Things like that,
yeah.
And still being supportive of women.
Yeah, and
it's so confusing sometimes.
The socialization too, you know, plays into it a lot. You know, if you've ever been around children and seen their cartoons that are put out, you know, you have to be discerning. Like, you have to say
Disney,
right?
It's
or
like
Barbie is really like, you know, it shows women that all they can do is be these helpless creatures that wear
love material
pink
things,
and just want
metrosexual males.
She can do a lot of jobs now too, as long as she's working.
She can do a lot of jobs
under the government.
Do they have like different? They have put different Barbies out, like engineer Barbie,
right.
And
I'm sure it exists.
Chemical engineer Barbie.
Yeah, Baker Barbie and pilot Barbie, probably, right? Or no?
But if the young woman like decides, oh, I want to be a model, still that's her choice, right?
Right.
Or do I want to be, you know,
or do I want to pay for my drinks? Yeah.
Then that's her choice. But it's all about choices and recognizing women as like people, just
right.
like
right.
Yeah,
well, and it's also getting it in girls' heads when they're young, you know.
Yeah.
Which is important. It's usually the opposite, though, Telly. It's usually women are, like, born, you know, thinking I can do what I want to do with my life. And then they're told...
Girls don't do that.
No, like, girls, you know, you shouldn't really do that because men don't like smart women. Or,
do you really think that?
Or maybe they see...
What age do you think that occurs at?
I think it starts right away.
Yeah, through socialization. Sure. Yeah, I mean, just like the messages you get in school... from teachers who don't know that they're doing that. I mean, it's not that most authority figures to a child don't know that they're actually socializing children that way. It's
we're products of our environment, and we're consumers, so we're consuming what is out there. And you know, the reality is that there's a lot of propaganda and there is a lot of brainwashing.
You know what? They make a Lego for girls now. Isn't that true? It's like a girl line, but it's still like a separate line. So how do you feel about having a...
Really?
Does it have like more pink in it?
I think it does.
Yeah, see, I mean, that's
that would
the
be a
thing,
thing,
you know?
yeah.
Like,
it's not making it an equal playing field and saying, like, you know, girls can use the regular Legos.
First of all, I have to just voice my gripe about Legos right now. Okay.
Watch your tone, man.
Okay, so
you're tired of stepping on them in the middle of the night.
Yes,
I have a Ghostbusters Ecto-1 Lego on my work desk right now.
Okay, listen. The problem with Legos right now is when we were all growing up, we had like the multicolored kit that, I mean, maybe you guys did, maybe this is dating myself, but there was no like
preformed.
It wasn't like you have to follow these instructions.
Yeah. Right.
You got a kit of Legos. You got a kit of Legos, and you had like 1,000 red, 1,000 green, whatever. And you just made stuff out of your imagination. It didn't matter, and it was multicolored. Now everything is so precise. If you're missing a part, you can't put the X-wing together.
You can still make your own stuff, though.
And they're so expensive.
Have you been on Lego's website lately? It's awesome.
Listen, I'm not saying Legos aren't awesome.
They have all their projects where fans make their own Legos, and they have like little PDFs of how to do it yourself. It's amazing.
No,
that's cool. People
and you can vote on it.
People post stuff.
I'm not saying Legos aren't awesome. I'm just saying that they're extremely expensive.
I might have to put
it's
this
taking imagination away,
and they're taking away some imagination from it. What was great about it is
that's what I always had, though, and I had them ever since I was a kid. I always had directions.
Oh, did you? Okay.
But I would make my own shit, of course. Yeah.
Legos allowed you to be an engineer of your own imagination.
Yeah.
Now
my imagination would always
you get
be
instructions,
like
and it's a little different,
That's interesting, considering our discussion, like the scope of our discussion of like this hierarchical authority that's telling you like you've only got certain things that you can make and not giving you the imagination.
They give you only the pieces.
Do you think that like pink Legos though is offensive in any way though?
I would say so.
Just like a little.
Just because you can just
depending
make
on how it's marketed, right? If they sold pink Legos,
only for girls,
if it says like now girl Legos and they're like pink and red and
it's kind of an obvious
or
thing
flowering
that girls,
or something.
I mean, as far as I always thought that girls, they like playing with dollhouses and stuff. So
that's where the socialization comes in.
That's where it's not.
Is that wrong? Is that wrong to assume?
I understand what you're saying because I also
it's the same thing. Wouldn't it be almost
or not? Have to be mindful.
Okay. So
wouldn't it almost be progressive to be like to cater to girls with a product and just kind of slightly alter it so that girls might like it more?
What does the expert think?
Well,
I was just gonna say. I mean,
as opposed to just having only boy Legos and be like, oh no, girls don't like putting stuff together.
No. Okay, so I understand what you're saying. We're giving them the opportunity to have something that maybe they identify with.
Yeah, maybe girls don't want to put together Batman all the time.
Yeah, but no, but you have to. You have to, when kids are young, you have to let them. If a little boy wants to wear a dress, you see stories like this online all the time.
I'm going to have something to say about this.
No, well, I'm just saying, they show stories all the time where they say if a kid wants to explore whatever it is, like little girls. Like I have 4 little girls in my family, and I've watched them all grow up. And my goddaughter loves cars and the turbo and all that stuff with cars. You're going to tell her no.
But some families would be like,
no, you're not going to say no.
But I'm saying,
I don't think that way.
Yeah, you don't think that way. So you're coming at it from a different perspective. That's what we were saying. You're not thinking of it as making something gender specific only for them that has been they've been conditioned to like.
Because a lot of families they will have this picture in their mind like, okay, this is my granddaughter. Women need to be like this, so I'm only going to buy her stuff that is princess related, and she can't think outside of that.
And I think maybe
the marketing has fueled that with.
Okay, I guess I kind of understand.
And even a bigger picture that's part of this issue is the fact that we are heavily consumers of stuff. You know what I mean?
Stuff. Girls need stuff.
What do we
need? Stuff.
The reality is we need none of that. You know what I mean? Just me. For me and my wife, we started to now we do hand-me-downs and stuff. We get it from family, friends that maybe had kids, and they're like, oh, well, we have this. It's oh, cool. We'll use that and just get more use out of it instead of buying something else. You know what I mean? Or contributing to that the consumerism that just kind of gets a little out of control. You know?
Right.
I'm really trying to think.
He's fighting it.
I'm not fighting it, but I do think there's a clear difference at one point. And I don't think it has to do with just embedding and stuff like that.
Okay.
Even if that's so.
So genetic, you mean? There's a genetic disposition.
Let them pick. That's the biggest thing.
Oh yeah, I would always be for that.
Yeah.
In which as a kid, I know my siblings, they always get what they wanted to get. I don't remember any families that toys were forced upon them. Mm-hmm. They chose what they wanted to play with.
But don't you just, as a kid, see the commercial of little girls playing with girl toys, and then that's what they're going to want.
Yeah, but at the same time, they could have went out and got Batman shit too. I can't imagine a parent being like, no, girls should have this.
Well, but it's conditioned. I think.
What Casey's saying is that there's no girls playing with the Batman stuff on the commercial.
TV, yeah.
It depends
but there
on
are some. I do know. I remember some that did, and that was fine.
On the commercials.
But that was no. I just meant I knew girls growing up who were into that stuff.
Oh yeah.
At the same time, a majority preferred the Barbie doll stuff, where the other more masculine stuff was still available to them. They could have chose that, but they didn't want to.
Okay, so think about this. You're a child. You're very impressionable.
Like I would. Okay, well, let's flip it on the other side of it. I never had any desire to get a Barbie doll. And it wasn't because of any sort of commercials or anything being pushed upon me. I just didn't want to play with it. In my mind,
but
what could I do with that?
Did you play with G.I. Joes or Star Wars figures? I did.
That was a different.
It's very similar. I mean,
I didn't like G.I. Joe too much because they were built shitty.
But see, like you wouldn't see a commercial of a man playing with a Barbie doll either. So, I think just ultimately it comes down to your...
I can't imagine that. That doesn't affect you as a kid, though, I don't think.
Oh, it does.
I think it does.
The commercials were... I remember I had this friend who would just watch the commercials and stare and be like, I want that.
I strongly disagree with that, because I do remember playing with, like... I would use Barbie houses, but with my own toys, because I liked having, like, a setup.
Yeah.
And, like, little rooms and stuff.
Listen,
a giant doll with hair, like, what can I do with that? It can't hold anything.
You would have to see... Yeah, they don't have any packs for guns or, like, any like, stuff.
And that's my own personal preference as a kid. That's not someone telling me...
There's no blasters.
I could have glued a gun in Barbie's hand if I wanted to. I just didn't want to.
Did you guys make, like, the cardboard cutouts of, like, blasters and stuff? Like, when you didn't have it, like, you would cut it out and draw it.
Like, no, I never.
I don't remember.
Okay.
It's too long ago.
So, all right. So, imagine this, okay? And I experienced this firsthand because I have a son who's 5. Okay. So before we got rid of TV, okay.
Before you got rid of telly.
No, the telly.
He's secretly British. Before we got rid of the telly.
The telly. So before we got rid of television, commercials would come up, and my son would be like, "Oh, that's later he'd be like, I want this thing or whatever," and I'm like, "Oh, well, did you see that at the store?" No, I saw it on the commercial. Kids are extremely impressionable by commercials because they make it look really super cool. Like you're playing with it.
Gosh, we have to get rid of this TV. It's cutting into our hand-me-down plan.
No, it definitely.
They're not going to want these hand-me-downs.
I mean, with everything, with commercials, with movies, with everything. I mean, the marketing just alone in marketing and advertising. Mm-hmm. To kids is obviously it's no brainer. It's like out of control.
That's what they market. They try to get to the kids first.
Of course.
So I think I see. We're not saying that some people don't prefer one thing over another. We're not saying that there may not be somebody might not like this one thing or other. But television definitely
really having issues with this because I don't feel like I was able to be swayed that easily as a kid.
Well, you may not have been.
I think as a kid you're just shown things and you decide what you like and what's cool shit to you.
How did you know about things though?
Commercials.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't have a fucking internet or iPad to go check out, so that's how I saw things. I didn't know when new toys are out without having
It's different now with the internet.
Yeah, now
I mean,
but it's the same thing.
Well,
right, but it's also kind of what you're exposed to. It's also what your family, what your parents expose you to.
What your parents say as far as like if you pick up a toy, if they shame you for it, if they say like, oh, okay, if like Betty picks up a G.I. Joe and mom and dad don't say anything, she's going to be like, okay, it's cool to play with G.I. Joe. But if their family's like, no, play with Barbies, then it's going to fuck you up.
Or for little girls, like in the summers running around, like, with sticks and with, building stuff in the yard and, getting bruised legs and stuff like that. And, doing that because she enjoys it and isn't playing with combing Barbie doll's hair. I think it more or less, it's like, and I read stuff like this all the time just because it interests me and just because I have little girls in my family and I want to know how, how I should act around them and how, just to be mindful of certain things. You have to you have to expose little girls to everything.
Yeah.
You have to show them that but I think it's if little boys are doing something, just because a little boy's doing something, don't let people tell you that you can't do something.
But if you don't want to, Bobby, and I think this is where your concern comes in, but if the girls don't want to do it,
I think nowadays more than anything, there's way less less of a divide than when we were kids, because I think everything now is far more gender neutral than it used to be.
Well, yeah, because that's becoming popular, so they're going to try to capitalize on it.
But they'll still market to girls, like Frozen.
I was going to argue.
You know, and little boys like Frozen too, but all the other Disney stuff, which is marketed
even
mostly to girls.
You know, as a kid, I got a lot of X-Men toys and stuff. I wanted X-Men toys, but I had plenty of female figures. I mean, that's because
were they always? Did they always need to be rescued? How did you play with them?
No, they were equally capable of fighting.
See, I think we're on the same boat. You kind of agree that it's up to choice, right?
I think he's a secret devil's advocate.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask this. I was going to be devil's advocate,
I don't know.
and I was going to ask about.
I think as a kid, you're very honestly into what you're into, and
I think that's true.
I can't imagine a situation where people are pushing down on you, like, no, you shouldn't have that. Have this.
Well, that's good that you have that in your family.
That legitimately is.
It's still important.
And I think even now that there's less chances of that because everything now is mixed. Look at all the popular cartoons now. They're Adventure Time, all the weird Cartoon Network ones. It's all anyone can be into them. It's not.
Yeah, they're kind of
specific.
But they're also pushing a lot of things to kids at a younger age.
Well, that's always going to happen. That's something we need to accept. I mean, kids like toys. Show them commercials of toys.
Well, it's not just toys. It's like all shows on Nickelodeon, all these other Nick Jr. or whatever these other shows are. Where I mean, they're girls like they're showing like girls and boys like and little kids are watching this stuff like dating and boyfriends and this and that. It's not just a cartoon.
Do you guys remember Pete and Pete and like all the good shows? Yeah. I wish there were shows like that for kids
Dare?
now.
That's where I go.
Double Dare?
Way back.
Whoa.
Mark Summers.
Yeah, we're going back.
Not related to David.
You can't do that on television?
I don't know. Like, those shows definitely were
they were smart. They were surreal.
But I've seen cartoons lately that are way progressive, and they're not shoving it down your throat either. Mm-hmm. It's strange. Like there's a show called Steven Universe I got into recently, and it's very progressive. It's a little boy with 3 older women, and those are the main characters.
Right.
And the last episode I watched, they have like powers where they can fuse into each other, and most of the shows,
I know
the 3 female characters were able to fuse into each other. But in the last one, I saw the boy fused with a girl and became an older woman, and this whole time it's the main character's a boy, but he's a girl for this episode, and it deals with him going to a club and dancing with a guy and being hit on. I'm like, this is fucking progressive. Like and it's not pushing an agenda. It's just
I think you're right.
Just doing its own thing. So I do think things are getting better.
Yeah, I don't think we're arguing that.
It is easy to say that shows used to be better because we identified with them more and they hold a lot of weight in our lives. Mm-hmm. And some of them, they were.
They're also nostalgic, so they hold a special
nostalgic,
spot,
and a lot of them were higher quality and often had more to say. But I do think there are a lot of shows now that are made by people that are from our generation, and it shows that they're actually putting effort into making it meaningful and have emotion, and little kids can relate to them. Like that, even that show Steven Universe, his mom is gone the entire time. He just has a dad, and his dad's kind of off doing his own thing. So it's. They even have an episode that acknowledges that the girl that he likes, her parents don't like, or she had to lie to her parents saying that he came from a nuclear family, and the whole episode is him pretending like he just has a mom and a dad. And he doesn't.
Yeah. Or we don't let TV raise our kids.
Yeah, I think that's
true.
Right.
That's very true too.
I mean,
how does that fit into the feminist movement? TV? Is it just completely like get it away from?
Well, like, is I don't know. Really I mean, I can't speak for all feminists, right?
Yeah,
I'm only one woman.
Right, but you're fighting. You have a particular set of standards for what you believe in as feminism.
Yeah. I mean, with television. I'm viewing it from a certain lens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain things that I'll turn on and I'll be like, I can't watch this.
Yeah, okay. So you can choose.
I mean, I don't have cable. I have Netflix, so I pick what I watch.
Right.
But even with shows that I like, there will always be issues, but you just view them with a critical lens. You can still enjoy it. Like with Mad Men, even though that show set out to.
You must love Mad Men.
I've been bringing it up just because, that's what I've been watching to get ready for the Vanguard on.
Yeah, I imagine you guys can really go into that.
I tried to get into it. I could not get it. It was just
I mean, it takes a little while.
It was just so boring.
But
nothing happened.
So I'm watching it, as a person that likes the show, but also as a scholar. So I'm looking at, there's no black people on the show. There's like 3 black people on the show.
Yeah. they lift things into the room and then they walk out politely.
So there's like a maid and like a receptionist and like one other person.
Right.
And I don't even remember what she does. That's how insignificant she was in the show. And there are like no black men. So anyway, so I'm watching the show knowing like, okay, this is all white people on the show.
Not to throw a monkey wrench into the conversation, but isn't it a certain
60s,
period of time?
60s. Yeah.
So
and
what
could be part of?
I was going to say is maybe it has something to do with the segregation.
Realize in 2015 it's pretty popular, so there must be some kind of reason people are like, let's watch this show.
Yeah.
Beyond the writing, I mean, women are pretty marginalized.
So I mean, it's it's multifaceted. I think as long as you're looking at culture with a critical eye, you can, watch whatever you want. You watch a commercial, you know what's going on. But if you're a young child watching television and the television's raising you, you don't know what the hell you're watching.
Yeah, that's true.
So you're just learning these gender roles and like societal norms and thinking,
stereotypes and all those other things that's kind of being.
It's such a fine line because there are strong women who are very happily raising their children. In a healthy family.
Women can be strong and do whatever they want. That's the whole point.
No, I understand. I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, while we are, wanting young women, especially young women, to get in their head that they can do whatever they want in this world, and instilling that in them. At the same time, a lot of their mothers are, there's a healthy family, healthy relationship, and they are happily, raising their children and not working and that sort of thing. And, there's some families with 2, 3, 4 kids, and that's how it is. I don't think we should take away from that either, because, the woman of the household, that's what she's happy.
Well, I think that's the basic point of the feminism is that whatever your choice is, that you have the opportunity to make that choice.
I understand that.
So if there are women who are like, I want to, raising children is what I want to do.
Right.
They should have that option, and they should also have the option, and this is getting into a critique on capitalism, they should also have the option to say, like, I want my husband to be there too. I want to spend more time with my husband. I don't want him to have to work so damn much.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
because there's sacrifice that comes into play if one person stays home and raises the kids. I mean, there's a lot of handcuffs and kind of like roadblocks along the way especially with raising families nowadays because of the
Right.
Yeah.
I had a question that was. Were you gonna ask something else, Telly? I didn't want to cut you off.
No. I'm just saying that as much as it's, as much as we want to empower women and be men who are supporting women whichever way that we can, whether they're younger, whether they're real young, or whether they're our own age, whatever it is. Like say, hey, you know what? That is a great idea. You should do this. You should pursue opening your own business. You should pursue, making a magazine like we were talking about before, or whatever.
I think part of it though is breaking down your preconceived, like you see people as different than you, and the reality is that we're all individual humans, and it's not really about man or woman. It's about having, like, respecting that person with human dignity and saying you can do whatever you want because. There's no it's not because you know what, even though you're a woman you could still do it,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Like
it's not like you have to give me permission to do it, which is what women have dealt with for generations. Is like, I want to do it, I better ask a man first.
And
I didn't mean in that sense.
Well, earlier I asked how that came about, and I've been very curious to kind of know how, like, what happened, because I mean it used to be a very different culture.
I thought she was explaining that the capitalism kind of brought that on pretty much.
I think that's the biggest like I said, it's just a ruse.
Well, I wanted to ask this question about feminism, and I actually had a couple different points that, as we were talking, they kind of come up. But it seems, I tend to subscribe to the idea that gender roles, in some ways, give us a biological and almost an evolutionary advantage, in that if we can fully understand their capacity in whatever gender we are, we can utilize that to our advantage to better our situation. And it seems as though in a lot of situations where you have different groups and in like the sexual different sexes, kind of fighting back and forth about their gender role or neutralizing gender roles and this kind of thing, it seems as though I just wanted to know from your perspective, how you view the benefits of having gender roles and not neutralizing them completely.
I think you definitely get into that when you talk about feminism, because people assume like, oh, feminists must want to be a man, like they must, because only men can be empowered and whatever, and they must just want to be this androgynous person, or
kind of forego everything that makes them biologically different than a man, and almost say.
I have a good sort of story that touches on what you're trying to get across. Like I remember Joe Rogan took heat a little while back because he talked about an MMA fighter who was a man and got a sex change and became a woman, but didn't tell anyone. Right. And so she was fighting women. Without disclosing that she used to be a man,
with the physical kind of attributes,
really beating them up. Yeah, and then Joe Rogan, expressed his opinion on it, criticized it, and got backlash from a lot of feminist groups. But his criticism, he's a very educated person, especially on that subject. Men are just built differently. Even with hormones, even with surgeries, you can't change certain things. You can't change the way your hips
there's biometrics that are involved.
Shoulders, certain things with speed. You physically just can't change that. Yeah. And there's going to be a clear advantage in that situation where you have a guy that used to be, or a girl that used to be a guy and is now a girl but fighting girls. Right. There is an unfair advantage to that. Yeah. He expressed that, and then he got backlash from feminists and the transgender community for expressing that. Yeah, that kind of close.
Yeah, I totally get it.
Well, I mean that kind of shows some of the biological advantages or disadvantages in some ways. Yeah, I was just curious what her viewpoints or maybe from the feminist ideals, like what is.
How do they just want to not ever be identified as woman? Do they want to just be in? I don't think,
because I see a lot of these things about, like you had mentioned, about boys wearing dresses and girls being able to I mean, I can't really think of an example that would kind of be a barrier. Maybe the dolls or whatever, that type of thing. But I think there are definite advantages to embracing your biological self and who you are and getting it more in touch with that than to be confused in some ways. Because as a parent, I'm looking at the world through I'm trying to look at the world through how can I prepare my son to be a strong man in our world and to have an advantage so that he can survive, right? And I take that same stance from my daughter, like how can I prepare her for the world as it is, to be a strong woman, or and to take advantage of her attributes, whether it's her intellect, her her physicality, or my son's physicality, like everything, like be able to use who they are and know who they are. But I think in some cases you can't. Things don't exist in a vacuum. So if you are raising your child to be whatever gender they choose, they still are going to come up against resistance in society, and to it may almost hinder them from realizing their true self, whatever that might be. Does that make sense? Maybe that's
let me get back to a part of what you said.
Just got wild.
So just to get to a part of what you said. So with Anarcha Feminism, Anarcha Feminism is really cool because. And the conference I went to, Anarchism and the Body, right? So we deal with our bodies. What types of changes can we make by the choices we make with our bodies? So there's this concept that you kind of have to understand that Foucault talks about, docile bodies, and that's what capitalism hopes to create, is people who are disaffected, who don't give a shit about anything. They just go to work and, they have these docile bodies, right? So when we talk about Anarcha Feminism, this is what I think you guys will like, which is really cool. Anarcha feminists are concerned with not becoming men, right, or buying into capitalism, which was created by men, but creating a society that is more, has a proclivity towards female-coded things like being, communicating with each other, creating these communities that focus on, like, collaboration versus competition. These things that are coded female will come to the fore if we allow, feminism to fully take root, and for women to see, like, okay, you don't want to be a corporate feminist where you're like just being a cutthroat.
Imitating a masculine trait or whatever it is.
You want to embrace your femininity, whatever way that is for you. Maybe like it's not pink, right? Which is not for me, obviously. But women can be, however they want to be, and they can also kind of usher in this era where people are thinking more about collaboration and.
But there's even more to it than that. I mean, women have an amazing ability of understanding and I think are less judgmental in some ways, and they also have a very nurturing kind of disposition.
Me and Tully just looked at each other in a very weird way. We're like, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
See,
Mister, I'm married and haven't been dating for a while.
I mean.
Well, you guys are dealing with a certain kind of...
There's big judgmental... I mean, in my eyes, women judge each other all the time.
Yeah, and this is where you get into, like,
that's very detrimental.
What is female? What is feminine? Right?
I think
it's true.
No, we both locked eyes. We're like,
I think women. Well, okay. So let me defend my point. I think that women are. You're dealing with a certain situation where women are in a competition for whatever it is, the affection or whatever. So you're going to have. That's going to bring out a competitive kind of nature to everyone. And they're very maternal in a way. They protect their own situation. So I don't think that women are are more judgmental than men in any way. I actually think it's the opposite. No. I think men are much more judgmental. I mean, this is kind of where we're in the situation that we're more or less in now, where there is much more of an oppressive kind of nature because people are categorizing and they're stereotypical kind of ideas.
So if we think about it in terms of yin and yang, right? Like the Oriental sense. So in our society, we have these two forces always working. We have the force that's coded masculine, the force that's coded feminine. So that's how I always think about it, because I do believe that, we're born with certain traits, right? So some of them are socialized, some of them, are not. And if we can embrace them and, create this... I mean, we've been doing the masculine for a very long time, and we've been upholding the masculine for a very long time. So to embrace the more feminine side, I think. That
was my question. In Anarcha Feminism, does masculinity fall by the wayside as far as we have it defined? Well. But I guess we've been trying that for so long, and it's not working for a lot of people.
Wouldn't it be more beneficial to have a neutral...
There's an idea of toxic masculinity. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's not just that, like, being a man is wrong or something. It's that the masculinity that a lot of men have been shown has been toxic. And a lot of men are not toxically masculine.
Yeah.
But that's the one that's, like, put on a pedestal is, like, the, very, like, I don't know, the jerky guy who will stop at nothing to get what he wants. Yeah. That's, like, the ideal, right?
Right. And
it's called the Han Solo.
You guys brought it up a few minutes ago when I said about, a woman having to answer to a guy. Like you said, when I was just trying to say that, it's nice. I personally enjoy supporting women.
No. Yeah, I wasn't criticizing what you were saying. I was just saying that the different perspective,
Yeah, well, no, I wasn't criticizing. I'm just saying, like about women having to get men's approval on stuff.
Yeah.
You know, all I meant was there's like awesome
It's
like
better to be
awesome
supportive,
women.
right.
There's like strong, awesome women in our age range who are doing great things. I mean, just in our own town alone, I'm friends with a lot of women who are business owners,
right?
Who bust their ass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, you know, as a man, the best thing you can do to support them is to support them. You know, maybe not financially, but at least like, you know.
Right. Show your support through whichever way, whatever you feel is
and I mean,
adequate.
I don't think that's like a woman having to answer to the guy, you know.
No. I think it's just with anything, you know, like if you can identify it with race, because you guys aren't racist, right? So whenever, you know, you deal with a racist person, you always have to tell them to check their privilege and say like, okay, you don't understand this totally because you were born privileged, right? You were born. So if you're a white man, you're kind of like held up as like you're the important person in society. So you have to look at the other people who are seen as less important by society and say like, okay, where am I in this privilege scale, right?
My method has always been to not even acknowledge them then, because I just know I can't relate to them whatsoever.
Yeah.
After that, just unevolved.
I was going to say, I think there's some social things that we're too lax about, and there are certain things that we need to be a little more aggressive about, you know. And I think racism, I think prejudice, and bigotry, and just in a general sense, needs to be. I think, you know, we need as a community, we need to come together and say that this is something that we're going to like. We should be at war. We should be at war about that, not about like. Yeah. You know, this blanket term of terrorism.
It almost should be a war. That'd be a more productive war than any war that we've been in for a while.
We've been in the drug war and the terrorist war for.
It is a very unevolved way of thinking. Like, really, that's what bugs you?
Yeah.
All the things going on. That's what bugs you.
That's
He's a little darker than you. He's a little more paler than you.
I think this kind of reminds me of why I stopped. Well, at first, I didn't agree with Anarcha Feminism. Because I thought, why have it just be about women when there's a ton of oppressed people? Let's just bring everybody up and make that the goal. But then I dug a little deeper, and I see that even in the anarchy movement, women are subservient. They're in the kitchen, like still supporting the cause, but they still have them in these roles that are feminine. So it makes sense that you have to.
Well, if it's all if they're all trying to be leaders, each person's taking a different role. Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, the women have these same roles where they can't be the outspoken person in an anarchy movement because they're like, here, why don't you hand out flyers and do this?
So you have to like explore people's idea of what women can do before you even like start a political movement. And, you know, like before I even get up in front to talk to people, you know, in front of a group, I know there are people looking at me that aren't even listening to what I'm saying because they're like, it's a woman. You know, and like even if that's not you, like you have to recognize there are people in the room, you know, that are going to think that way. Even if I know it's not my friends, it's not, you know, whatever.
Right.
So that's something that needs to be overcome, because if we don't overcome that, then these really big problems that we're facing, like they can't even be, you know, talked about.
Right. So how often do you find yourself in a situation where you have to look at, like, real self-evaluate because you're in a position of an oppressed person? So do you find yourself doing that quite often, like to be able to almost remove yourself from your situation, which is very challenging to do for anyone, and to be able to look at it from another perspective? It seems as though that seems like when you're speaking about like feminism and different things, you almost have to constantly like checks and balances yourself. I mean, do you find that that's challenging, or
like seeing things from other people's perspective?
Well, okay, so you were saying about checking your privilege, right? You know, so somebody that is from a certain background or whatever, that pendulum swings back and forth, right? It's the same way for somebody that's oppressed. They only see. I mean, I find this. I have an issue with authority because I came from my family. My father was an extreme alcoholic. I had a very illogical household, so I developed this kind of pushback against authority figures and people that were trying to tell me what to do, and I'm constantly having to come outside myself in some situations, say, you know what, this isn't a negative situation. This is just me falling back on what I is comfortable, for myself, and to look at it from outside myself and say, you also have to be understanding. You can fall into the same trap as the privilege. Does that make sense? Or in my situation, I can fall in the same trap as the authority, right. where I'm fighting just to fight, not. So they might be putting rules on me to just put rules because that's the way their structure is, but I might be fighting just to fight. Does that make sense?
Right.
So I guess what I was asking you is do you find that happens in some cases when you're like writing or when you're thinking about ideas and putting things together?
Am I fighting just to fight?
No. Do you find yourself having to step outside yourself and like look at situations differently because you are from a situation where you are what you're talking about?
I think more often I'm put in situations where I'm shown that my
validating
position, that my position is not okay. With one of the graduate degrees I went for, I was put in a position where I was shown that my position didn't matter, right? So to answer your question, I've seen it from both sides. It's getting a little late. I'm getting less.
Oh yeah. Well, we're gonna wrap it up.
Add on to what you were saying though too. Then when she's done.
Yeah.
I was going to say at the end, Andrew's still dropping dimes on people. Like with David too, you're like, I have this great question. David's
well, you know what we'll do? This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna wrap it up for tonight. We'll save that for the next time. Marlana, if you would grace us again another time,
to come back
and chat with us. We can do that. Before we tie all the tie everything in a nice bow here, we'll hit a little bit of promotion.
Yeah, I know she's with Vanguard. She's looking for artists and writers and poets. I saw your call out for people.
Yeah, for submissions.
Yeah.
If I tell people, if you can write a 500 character or 500 word post on Facebook talking about your opinion, you're a writer. So why don't you get published, in a community publication where a lot of people will see what you have to say. Progressive opinions need to be out there, and they need to be encouraged. So
yeah, we'll once we put this up online, we'll put the call out too. On our Facebook and everything.
We'll link everything up. So, Marlana, how can people find you if they want to contact you, or even just to look in on the Lehigh Valley Vanguard?
Well, they can go to LehighValleyVanguard.org, of course. My contact info is on there in the Pleased to Meet You page. And people could always email me at ek.marlana@gmail.com.
I noticed you also advertise the Lehigh Valley Vanguard at gmail.com. Is that?
And
okay.
Yep, they can email me there too.
So Lehigh Valley Vanguard.org or Lehigh Valley Vanguard at gmail.com. So if you had a question or you just wanted to reach out, those work. Also Facebook, Lehigh Valley Vanguard is on Facebook, so you can see it there.
Or Twitter, or whatever.
All of them. You said you had an active blog, so check that out. Find your pathway, to those kind of things, and so you can listen in on other ideas that you have. You have the webcast.
Yeah, I have. So we do, and they can find that on the website too, live on air.
Live on.
And my personal blog is marlanaesquire.wordpress.com. So.
Perfect. Bob, you got anything coming up, man?
Possibly not yet.
Okay, so we'll
I have
keep us
going
posted.
On now, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything that's
I'm
that's
in
up
Borders, Easton, Baby Blues in Philly. Yeah.
Right on, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good stuff. Casey, anything going on?
No, sir.
Nope, not going on. Telly.
Just waiting for the summer to really get here.
That's about it. We're getting rolling.
Just waiting for the sun to come out. Just hopefully have some good things going on in the summer.
Rocking this stuff. Thank you again for all our listeners. If you want to support the podcast, go to our website, which is www.artwarriorproject.org, or you can also go to www.andrewmkish.com, and it'll take you to the same place. Click on the AWP or AW Project tab. Also, if you want, we are taking pre-orders still right now for our T-shirt. If you want to support the podcast, please, that's an awesome way. You get to sport a pretty cool design that we came up here with our logo. Or if you want to support anything else, there's also a donate tab on there. If you want to donate to some of our projects, we have a couple things on there. We have the Life Warrior Pack project, which is basically to help the homeless. We're going to be putting together $20 backpacks full of all kinds of different products that can help people in whatever their situation is, maybe to get through. We're going to be dropping that in the fall, so right now would be the time to donate if you feel inspired to do that. If you want to find any of my artwork, you can go to just my website, andrewmkish.com. And thanks again, Marlana, for being
so
part
much.
of it.
This was wonderful.
It was really awesome.
I loved it.
Super. I mean, lots of stuff to digest. I was taking notes the whole time. So, really. So thanks again, and thank you to all our listeners out there. We'll talk to you guys next time. Later.
Bye.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"